Mr. Evans, Walter, getting started in 60 seconds, guys.
Got big arms, huh?
Yeah, it's a problem. Oh, wait, this is the city's right. I'm looking at the wrong.
Yeah, he was starting right. Oh, we lost Shirley.
I need a.
Tiki boys have the motorcycles.
All right, let's get started. Mr. Evans?
I know.
I'd like to call to order a Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. The date is July 24th. The time is 8:40 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chair Lawson,
Here.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Here.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Present.
Commissioner Lanier,
Here.
Commissioner Spiritus. Also present on the dais, Attorney Chris Smith, Pittman Law Group, Jonathan Evans, CRA Executive Director, Scott Evans, Director of Planning and Development, Anita Jenkins, Director of Neighborhood Services, Shirley Desir, Interim CRA Clerk.
Thank you. Can we have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilwoman Shirley Lanier? Commissioner.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions? Disclosures from the board? Motion to adopt agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Commissioner Vice Chair McCoy,
No.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 4-1 with Vice Chair McCoy dissenting.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
it is my understanding that Commissioner Miller Anderson is not in attendance at the meeting, but it's due to a health concern. And so under the most recent Attorney General opinion, she is still allowed to vote under special circumstances on all items this evening.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Consent agenda is routine in business. The consent is approved by a single majority vote. Items may be removed from open discussion. Does anyone want to pull an item from consent? Motion to adopt consent?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Do we have any public comment cards, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, we have no comment cards.
Comments? Motion, Madam Clerk? Roll call?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier, Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Going in the regular agenda?
Item 7A, request for CRA Board review of Oculina Development Project proposed by Forest Development. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have one comment card.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I can have the Director of Planning and Development for the CRA, Mr. Scott Evans, to make this presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Evans?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the board. The agency is requesting that the board review a proposed new development project, which has been submitted by Forest Development. The proposed project is located at 3700 Broadway. And they're proposing to redevelop the vacant grocery store that was formerly located on the property. New site plan applications are required to be reviewed by the CRA board as a review agency, and your recommendations are then forwarded to the City Council for final consideration of new entitlement development submittals. On November 10th of 2021, the Forest Development Group brought this concept to the CRA board. They were proposing to acquire that vacant structure and site and to redevelopment with a concept very similar to what has made it all the way through the staff review process. And the board at that time provided them direction to proceed to make application. The proposed project will demolish the vacant building, former grocery store, to construct a 25-story mixed-use development, which will include 399 residential units, 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail, 17,000 square feet of restaurant area, and 11,000 square feet of office space. The approved CRA plan includes strategies to pursue redevelopment. In the CRA, the goal of course, of the CRA is to promote increased tax revenue, provide affordable housing, and achieve economic development for the city. The proposed project is transformative. It's similar to a nearby project that's been built, almost finished, in the town of Lake Park. And we think that this will establish a new high-quality development standard in the Broadway corridor. And the project has been designed consistent with the urban principles that are established in the CRA plan and implemented in the city's downtown development area. The project will integrate retail along Broadway, which is an important component to help activate the street. I believe this project will provide the following redevelopment strategies for the area. It will provide significant tax revenue. This project is estimated to cost $425 million and will provide over $5 million a year in annual revenue to the city CRA. The look, feel, and investment potential of Broadway, I feel, will be improved as we seek to attract more projects similar to this, which are of large scale and high quality design. Also, we are looking to bring new restaurants and retail to the area. This is a true mixed use project, and they have designed it with a way that will help improve Broadway, including providing for decorative landscaping that will really, we're trying to create a very safe pedestrian environment. And this project will widen the sidewalks, put some landscaping in between the pedestrians and the right-of-way, which helps make pedestrians feel safer. The CRA plan, this is located in the downtown core neighborhood. That area is listed in the CRA plan. It provides that buildings in this area shall accommodate entertainment, retail, office, and residential uses. It provides that signature sites, which serve as gateways into the district, will be designated for the tallest buildings in the downtown. Provides that urban space is encouraged by promoting outdoor activities such as sidewalk cafes, parklets, markets, events, and that the Broadway corridor should be established as a pedestrian-friendly main street with retail storefronts included. And it also provides that mixed-use development, which is desired. It identifies that places that have sustainable patterns of development tend to have a balance of mixed uses, and providing mixed uses in the Broadway corridor can help to bring and meet the needs of residents, add more residents to the area, which will then help create a market for neighborhood commercial. The project proposed site plan meets all of these goals. The applicant is here this evening, and they would like to go through their project. They presented to the Planning and Zoning Board on June 27th, and they received a vote recommending approval to the City Council. Staff finds that this project will improve the property consistent with the goals and strategies of the CRA plan. This project will provide a substantial taxable value increase, and we recommend a vote to recommend approval of the project to the City Council, finding that the project's consistent with the goals and strategies of the Community Redevelopment Plan. And I'd like to introduce the development team, and they have a plan and can go through some of the details of their proposed site plan.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, council member, commissioners, city staff and council and public. My name is Wayne Richards, and I'm honored to be here with the Forest Development team. Thank you. Thank you. As Scott mentioned, back almost 3 years ago, November 10th of 2021, we came before you and said, hey, we're interested in working with the city. And this body, this board said, and this wording is directly out of your printed minutes. There is an opportunity to see a development of the same magnitude and even larger in some cases right here in the city of Riviera Beach. We know this is a catalyst to create additional economic growth. Once as well, in the minutes, it was indicated you're looking at a sizable contribution to the CRA by virtue of your TIF. We're looking at least an additional $3.5 million of annual revenue. Whether TIF is 10 or 20 times X, that's a significant increase to your CRA for additional redevelopment opportunities. With me tonight, I have the developer team, Forest Development, the great planners. We all know Insight Studios and Brian. You'll hear from Brian later. We have our engineers, architects, and surveyors here. We're going to give a limited presentation because you're going to see us in a few weeks for site plan approval if you so allow. So this is simply to say that, to show that we are consistent with the CRA plan. Who are we? Forest Development is very active here locally in the community. We know they are almost completed their construction in Northwest 220. They have a P3 partnership at the Lake Park Marina. That marina is being significantly enhanced and enlarged. They have a great project we read about in the Palm Beach Post at 10th and Park. Right here, once you get in Lake Park, Lake Park's getting a little love, but we're bringing it here to the city. This is where I prefer it to be, in this city. So we're bringing Oculina here. This team is led by a gentleman, Peter Batarian. In our internal meetings, Peter tells us, guys, we're here to do what the city wants. We want to partner with the city, find out what they want, and the answer is always yes. So you truly have a partner with the Forest Development team. Speaking about partnerships, for the last 3.5 years, even before we purchased the Winn-Dixie site, we've been partnering with these local entities. The principal and the members of Washington Elementary love us. They know us well. JFK Middle School, Inlet Grove, we're well known. We've been doing this for 3.5 to 4 years. Well, we have the Police Athletic League here in the city, Parks and Rec in the city. Port Palm Beach Holiday Toy Drive. She Speaks International. It was a mother-daughter date night. Friends of Manatee Lagoon. We had a Christmas toy giveaway. We support the River Beach Boys and Girls Club, Back to School Bash, the River Beach World Oceans Day. Over $175,000 in support in the city. Why? Because we truly are partners. This is not a one-off or a two-off. We're partnering with the community. Now, what will this project do for Riviera Beach directly and indirectly? Close to 2,000 jobs, 1,300 direct jobs, 250 indirect, and 300 induced jobs. Well, what's induced? The effects of spending by the households here locally as a result of direct and indirect effects. Obviously, direct impact, those are the initial, immediate, ongoing economic activities, and we'll go over that in detail. And you're going to hear specifically, members, how we are going to ensure that local residents, not that you've heard before, you're going to hear how we're going to ensure that local residents benefit. That is critical. This is a $500 million project. The construction and land improvements are $425 million and soft cost $75 million. So this is a $500 million project. Construction, during construction, I'm gonna go through this very quickly because it is late. It runs the gamut. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. You need helpers, technicians, then you need the bosses, you need the foremen.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
But
can we keep this germane?
Yes.
Because I don't care to hear that, right? I've been promised a lot. We've been promised a lot. That's great. If you guys are taking advantage of the MEHOP, I'm sure we can have this conversation at the city. But what's before us is if this is consistent with the CRA plan. And I really like what you're doing. I really appreciate
Okay.
it. But let's stick to the actual project.
Mr. Chairman?
Because I don't want anyone's vote to be swayed on a possibility of a vote. And that's not on a possibility of a job. And that's not what's before us, Mr. Richards.
Thank you.
Respectfully.
go ahead, Mr. Richards, go ahead.
Should I understand? So I'm going to keep it moving quickly.
Please, if we just keep it germane
Yes.
to the item.
Post-construction employment, hundreds of jobs. Now, what have we done to speak to the community? Back in 2023, we went door-to-door canvassing east of the community. We then had a community outreach meeting in November. It went very well. We then did door-to-door canvassing to the west of the community. And we greatly exceed the statutory requirements for the radius you have to hit. Then we had another community outreach meeting in January. Then we had a community open house in March. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had another community outreach meeting. The good news is everybody that is within proximity of Oculina knows who we are. They know about the project. And quite frankly, there's a significant amount of support for the project. I'm going to cut it short pursuant to the vice chairman's request and call Mr. Terry to the podium. Brian.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, board, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'll walk you through the project. Mr. Evans covered a significant amount of information I have in my presentation, so I'll try to move past those quickly. Again, just for sake of location, obviously this is a view that you can see the star indicates that's really the very northern boundary of the city of Riviera Beach. Obviously, Silver Beach Road is the bisecting line between Lake Park and Riviera Beach, and so this is literally the northern boundary. Again, there's really 5 total applications that are part of this. We're here to talk about the CRA and compliance with the CRA, and so I'll kind of keep our discussion directed towards that. This again is the map kind of showing again that we are in the downtown general district in the core portion of the CRA. That blue line that wraps around is the boundary of the CRA that we're within. And our request ultimately is a rezoning that's going to be IHC PUD that would be allowed on this parcel. You know, I'm sure everybody drives past this property very often. It's on a very prominent corner at the intersection of Silver Beach and Broadway, and truly is the entrance into Riviera Beach. And frankly, I think we all would agree that in its current condition, it maybe doesn't send the signal that we would all hope. Unfortunately, the grocery store has been closed for multiple years, and now we have an opportunity to come up with a new vision for what that is. This is the corner that's Silver Beach and Lakeshore Drive. Again, part of what we're doing is such significant infrastructure improvements, water, sewer, drainage, roadways, all that impact not just Silver Beach, but also Lakeshore Drive. This is a quick plan. Again, not to get into the weeds and the details of how the building works and the function of it, each piece, but it does have the residential, the retail, the restaurant, and the restaurants are, you know, not just, this is cafe, fast casual, and fine dining across all sectors, as well as some office space that's integrated within it. As you can see, sorry, I went the wrong way. You know, we are in the northern piece, the existing building, which is the Goodwill, the DD's. That structure is going to stay intact, and this building will be really on the northern end of that. This is the image that I think Mr. Evans had shown. This is the rendering that would show that same intersection, that same corner. Now, obviously, with the proposed Oculina, this is, you know, 25 stories, 300 feet, with all those components, with all of the development, the retail, the restaurant, all those components on the ground level along Broadway, along Silver Beach, and then also along the frontage along Lakeshore Drive. I'm going to just flip through a couple more images so you can get that character. This would be looking east, obviously, towards Singer Island. You can see the elevation from that view. And this is along Lakeshore Drive. So this is different in the context that you have the podium component with the really 4 to 5 levels that's facing the Lakeshore Drive side. You can see all the green that's in the front. That's our civic open space. This can be a pedestrian greenway all along that frontage of Lakeshore Drive to really soften and integrate the building along Lakeshore.
Could you take the rendering back just 2 images to Silver Beach frontage? One more.
That one?
Yeah, that's the Silver Beach frontage. Okay. Okay, thank you.
And this is an image that looks down the new Lakeshore Drive. This is something we work very closely with your engineering department on, coming up with a concept again, understanding the character of what's being part within the CRA, doing multimodal improvements, introducing and improving that roadway to create bike lanes, narrowing the actual travel lanes, doing, again, along that right side of that image, that pedestrian greenway that has meandering large sidewalks and it'll really feel like a park setting. That's not just for obviously the Oculina development, but certainly all residents that would be walking along the Lakeshore Drive. Obviously, we're here for you guys with the CRA tonight. And so Scott did mention the mission statement and the goal. I won't go over that again. But again, you know, what's important is our compliance with that. And in the downtown subcore area, you know, there are guiding principles, again, promoting outdoor activities, the sidewalk cafes, the street improvements, storefront arcade, all of things that we're very excited to have as a part of this project and part of this development. And then there are specific policies that policy 1.2.19, which outlines 7 different critical components, which we can check the box on every single one of those. All of these things that we're doing with this project, again, there's some improvements, you know, all the infrastructure improvement, water, sewer, all the electrical being buried, roadway improvements, drainage improvements, turn lane improvements, bike lanes, landscape lighting, palm tran shelter, across the board. We've worked to be in compliance with these expectations that are within the CRA. So with that, I am going to stop talking. I'll give it to Ms. Gaines if she would like, or if you would like to hear more specific to the MIHOP, Ms. Gaines is here to be able to speak to that directly.
I believe we'll wait on the city side when it comes before us.
Sounds good.
That'd be more relative to the city.
We do have the rest of our entire team,
Thank you.
development team, and everybody else if you have any questions.
We appreciate it. Public comments, man?
Mr. Chair, we have one comment card.
Thank
Margaret Shepard.
And while Ms. Shepard's coming up, could we, Mr. Evans, please check with Walter about the streaming? It looks like we may be cut off on YouTube. Welcome, Ms. Shepard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to everyone. As I listened to Wayne Richards talk, he came to planning and zoning, and I've been doing this a little over 16 years. He made it seem like Mr. Evans dropped from the ceiling and opened up his wings, and this is going to be better. I live there on 23rd, and I have to come around Lakeshore Drive. And I'm mighty afraid that this project is just a little bit too big for that area. Back over in that area he's talking about is very prominent houses. I think this project is a little bit too big. They didn't go into, kind of funny because I've seen it before, the garage where the cars go up in the elevator. I asked, well, if there's a storm and the elevator stops, what happened to the cars? They talked about a generator. Anyway, I saw it in Los Angeles, California at a facility, and I think there was a flood or something, I can't remember, but the cars were stuck there. I know, Mr. Severitas, you're gonna build Lake Park, and I think that's a pretty decent place to build. I have that feeling. But 2,000 jobs, and I'm thankful that it was stopped because every project I've been on, they promise jobs, and I follow it because I'm retired and I can get out and look and everything. I don't see any of us there. I don't see us working. The only time I saw people like us working, it was building this marina. And they kept track of who was here. I know because I had friends, I had family here, and I know for a fact they kept track of it. They're talking about the restaurants. And, the next day, then I got calls from some of the residents and some of the people that own shops there. And I made it very plain to them that when this project comes, they're going to take out all of Goodwill or I think it's a hair place there. Those people are going to lose their place of business. This is just a humongous building. I think that, and two separate, I think, buildings it is. I think it's extremely important that you guys stop and think about that. It's going to affect us all in the area. You're talking about coming around Lakeshore Drive. You're talking about Silver Beach Road. You're going to restrict us from our daily life.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Ms. Desir, if we don't start at the beginning, let's just not start it, and then we'll make sure that we catch the time later. Thank you.
That is the end of public comments.
Thank you. Additional comments from more. And thank you for your comments, Ms. Shepherd. I believe if the board has any questions for Mr. Evans or the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just wanted to ask, because all the time that when new development comes to an area, I'm very interested in what the neighbors have to say. You had 3 community meetings. I want to know what they said in those meetings. How did they react to this building? How, because that is something that's very important to the people who live in that area.
Right. It's a good question. It's certainly something that we have, again, if I kind of go back, if you give me just a second, I'll kind of go back to that slide just so you can see. I mean, we started early, reaching out to the community with the full intention and desire to hear from our neighbors, understand exactly what they would think about the proposal. The proposal has changed. There's been improvements that have come to the project due to some of the comments that have been made throughout that process. Again, we're talking, over about a year and I guess a little over a year that we've been having these conversations. Again, I think, it's not uncommon for a project of this scale. The top of the list is probably traffic, right? That is what was raised, and I think we just heard it. Concern about the traffic, that what's going to be brought to this, what's brought to the community with this new development. Interestingly enough, if that grocery store is operating, its traffic generation is more than what is actually will occur with this project. So, it's easy to forget that was a Winn-Dixie. It was operating. It was very busy. It created traffic. It was a very, very busy intersection. It's been derelict for quite a long time. And so, our proposal is certainly going to bring a difference than what is there today. But we've mitigated for all those things. We've worked with your city staff. We worked with Palm Beach County. We've worked with each individual agency to create, again, new turn lanes, roadway improvements. They're all going to mitigate and offset what traffic impacts would be there so that, it isn't a burden on the residents that are there. Trying to think the other major components that we've heard. I mean, I think there was issues with or concerns with, frankly, homelessness is an issue that's on that property and had been in the past. We truly believe that this project is going to change that. Nothing like eyes and lights on the streets to change the circumstance of the homelessness issue that's right there. Yep. Again, the site plan, we can dive really into some of these details on the plan when we come in front of the city for this. We have a new introduced street that's on the south side of the project that will connect back to Broadway to, again, further mitigate some of that traffic impact. Certainly the height of the building or the scale of the building, right? It's different. It's much, much different than what's there today. But it's not much different from what is occurring directly adjacent to. And I think, there's unique properties within the city. There's unique properties along Broadway. This happens to be one of those very unique properties that's directly adjacent to an operating marina, directly adjacent to the Nautilus development, and directly adjacent to what is future expansion of the Lake Park Marina. Taking advantage of those opportunities that are in front of the city to really maximize their potential, their value, their generation of revenue that can come back to the city, I think is very important for consideration. So, those are just a few of the points that we've talked about with the neighbors.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
Just one other question, not question, but I do have some reservation about the hugeness of it, and the thing that it's so close to the road. You know, if you go down Singer Island, you know, everything is set back from the road unless it's a house or something. So I like the idea. I like this concept. Especially the revenue generator for the city. I'm just a little concerned about the closeness of it to the road, and I mean the size. Okay, but if it was seemed like it was a back a little bit, it wouldn't be so. Because when I come down Broadway and I look and see this thing there, it is huge, but it seems so close to the road when I'm driving by. I'm like, oh, I'm so close. So I think that's kind of some of my reservation with it, but I like the concept of it for sure.
And I could respond to that. So I know that you're referring to the Nautilus project and its proximity to the road. I can assure you that the Oculina design is set back further from Broadway than the Oculina, or I'm sorry, than the Nautilus project is. But we also wanted to set that building back from Lakeshore Drive due to the fact that we do have the single family homes that are to our east, right? So it was a balance to work within that. But I think, with the streetscape improvements, the landscape improvements that's being proposed, we've got very wide sidewalks, meandering sidewalks that go along Broadway. It's a massive improvement from what's there today. And as I mentioned, it's a significant setback significantly further than the Nautilus project. So we can, again, I can dive into those details further with you at the city council meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Spiritus.
Mr. Evans, I saw on your chart when you were giving your presentation, $5 million, close to $5 million for affordable housing. That's in addition to the $5 million in tax revenue, correct?
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Yes, the projected contribution to affordable housing, I think, is 4.9 million.
Right. So that money will go into a lockbox for the city, a housing fund that the city council will control?
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Yes, that's the intent of the MIHOP ordinance provides that those dollars are reserved for affordable housing projects only, as determined by ultimately the city council.
So if the city council wanted to, they could take that money and put it towards like a project like the Rogers project that the Housing Authority is doing and subsidize the purchase price even more.
Mr. Chair,
for
I
people
would
from
ask that you please have the members speak to the item that's before us and not speculative items that speaks in
With all due
terms.
respect, I'm not finished speaking yet.
I'm calling a point of order.
Okay, well, you didn't say that, so call a point of order.
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
I'm calling a point of order because I don't disagree, but I don't want a member's decision to be based on the fact that someone's dangling a carrot of monies to the city. It should be based on whether or not this project is consistent with the CRA plan. That's it, Mr. Chair. That's all we have before us.
All right, Mr.
Ms.
Chair, can
Spiritus,
I
continue,
finish, please?
please.
All right, I appreciate your comment, but I have the right as a councilman to ask what that money could be used for. That's the topic, that's the discussion. I will ask anything I want, whenever I want, when it's pertaining to the topic that we're speaking. And this
Mr. Chair,
pertains to the topic that we are
Are
speaking.
you going to
right
rule
now.
on the point of order?
Commissioner Spiritus, continue with your comments so I can rule on the order.
Thank you.
Go-
So
go-
the
I'm sorry,
city
were you done with your
council,
co- were you
all
done
I'm
with your
asking is, can the city council use that money to subsidize existing projects rather than new projects?
So to that point, pertaining to this project being consistent with the goals and strategies of the community redevelopment plan, that would be in line with this question, allowing for the CRA for the redevelopment plan. So I would believe that Dr. Spiritus's question is in line with what we're talking about tonight.
Fair enough.
Go ahead, Dr. Spiritus. Or actually, if we have an answer for him,
Mr. Chair?
please.
I believe that particular fund has been empty for some time. So I'm not that familiar with the rules. But I do believe that the city can choose to, as long as it's spent on affordable housing, they could do that with partnerships or through partnerships with private developers or other agencies.
Thank you.
Thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you. And thank you for the answer. Commissioner,
Just one more. Do
Of
you
course.
guys have a model of it, of this project?
We do not have a physical model. We have these beautiful renderings.
Yeah, but it's hard to tell. I mean, 'cause this
But
thing
no,
is
we don't have a physical model of it at this point.
very big. Okay.
thank you. And to that point, to my colleague's point, it is consistent with the goals and strategies of our CRA. So while we're here tonight, we are excited for this project. I just want to thank you for the presentation. My only feedback is that just making sure it's in line. I want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for local participation, businesses, jobs, opportunities. You showed a lot of that. So it's in line with our strategies and plan. I'm excited. Thank you for the investment into Riviera Beach. Additional comments? Thank you for the
Yes.
presentation tonight, guys. Thank you.
Let me know when you get that model done.
7B.
Marina,
Sorry, is there a request for action?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, we're requesting that the board vote to provide comments, to recommend a vote to recommend approval of the project to the City Council, finding that it's consistent with the goals and strategies of the Community Redevelopment Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made, probably second. Additional discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. 7B?
Marina Village Phase 2, waterfront elements. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have 5 comment cards.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Director Scott Evans. He's our Director of Development, Planning and Development for the CRA.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans?
Thank you. This item will update you on the status of Marina Village Phase 2 project and request direction from the board on how to proceed. The CRA has completed 99-year ground leases for 2 different elements of the Marina Village project, the 2 elements that are along the Broadway corridor. And I'm pleased to update the board that the various architectural, engineering, landscaping plans for these projects of element 7 and 8 have been completed, and they have now been submitted to the Department of Development Services for site plan review. They will of course, go through the internal department review process before they proceed to public hearings, which would end with final consideration by City Council. So we're happy to see that those projects are moving. They, of course, include over $200 million of new construction, and will bring more than 550 units to the Marina Village, which we think will be important to our waterfront development. The co-development team, which consists of APD and TESRAL, have requested to amend the master plan for the waterfront elements of Marina Village area. At the last CRA board meeting in June, the board reviewed a concept plan for the change. It was not approved, but the board directed the developers to submit a complete proposal for the development of the waterfront elements on a timeline that would have directed that for the board to receive and consider the business terms for these elements at tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, the development teams were not able to be in agreement on a unified submittal, and the CRA received 2 competing proposals for element 6, which were not coordinated. Additionally, this was further complicated by the recent letter of withdrawal, which was received by the CRA from the supporting funding and development partner, Sonnenblick Development. They are here tonight, and they have indicated that they are continuing to discuss the project, however. The board and our public-private partnership consultants, Joan Lang and LaSalle, are here. We have received submittals, 2 of them for element 6, and a submittal for 1 through 5. But they are conflicting proposals. They have provided a written report, which is in your backup. And Nick Finelli, who's Vice President of Public Institutions at JLL, will summarize their findings to the board.
Thank you, Scott. Chairman Lawson, Commissioners, thank you very much for having us this evening. It's always a pleasure to be here in Riviera Beach. Just piggybacking on Scott's discussion here, I think we're really at a point where we've got 3 paths forward. First path I think we can talk about is the consideration of a 90-day extension of these timelines, give the development teams time to figure out a path forward, to work together, come up with a comprehensive plan. I think second path is we can go look at each of these individual proposals, choose one, and run with it. There are going to be some issues, I think, with the elements 0 through 5, element 6, depending on which one you choose, but that's another path. The third path that we discussed is ultimately issuing a termination of the ENA per Article 4.01 of the ENA, which would allow for a 90-day cure period, putting pressure on the development team to come to terms over the next, 30-day cure period, excuse me, which would then put pressure on the team to come up with a solution in the next 30 days. And if they don't, we have an opportunity to cancel the solicitation. And that's where we are. We've prepared a presentation we can go through if there are additional questions, but we wanted to lead off with really the three options and answer questions from there.
Okay. Do we want to go into public comment first? Okay, public comment, Madam Clerk.
Delcia Brooke Hamilton, followed by Dimitri Saloom.
Ms. Delcia?
Good evening, Council, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Mr. Jonathan Evans. My name is Delcia Brooks Hamilton, CEO of Pangea Grill. I just hope that this evening would be a positive direction for everyone, because it has been 10 years for me. And I'm really exhausted. I'm tired of this process. All I know is that back in 2015, I won a bid. I signed a contract, a lease agreement. I was told the project needed to stop because there was no parking. Well, the city knew there was no parking. And, they told me to go ahead, move forward. I had everything in place. It sounds like a broken record, but this is the facts. Because right now, I am really exhausted. I have spent so much money on this project, not to mention lost so much money because of the money that I did not have the opportunity to make. Not only that, the city has lost a lot of money too, because no revenue coming in, and there's still no revenue coming in at this point. So we need to make a decision on whether we're going to move forward with this or not, because number one, all the 3 pad sites that are out there was never a part of the original master plan. Oculina 70 was looped into this master plan, so here it is. I was stuck. I could not do anything. I could not build my restaurant. I had my master developer here. I had my investor here, and we were ready to go. I'm ready to go right now, but you know what? I can't move forward because I don't have an agreement, and I don't know at this point where this project is going to go, because I'm hearing different, I'm a little upset. Some may be a little bit excited tonight, but I need to see something done. It's ridiculous. I'm a Black woman, and I came to the city and I said, I want to do business with the city because I love the city. I love the people. I am here 3 days out of the week, and here it is. I'm still here waiting. And what am I waiting for? Why can't we make a decision? What is so difficult for us to make a decision? If somebody has the money, let's move forward. Let's move forward and get the job done. I am ready. And frankly speaking, you guys need to make a decision on moving this project forward. Whoever is not ready, get them out the way. And that's the bottom line. Whoever is ready, let's move forward. Let's get shovels in the ground. It's very easy to make the decision. If you have the funds, let's get it done. I am so tired of this. I have developed high blood pressure from coming
Thank you for your
here.
comments, ma'am.
From coming
Thank
here
you for your
all the
comments,
time,
ma'am.
and there's no decision made. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Dimitri Saloom, followed by Terrence Davis.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dimitri Saloum. I'm the owner of the Rafiki Tiki, as as much as other businesses in the city of Riviera Beach. I've been here, I believe, more than anybody else for 43 years, I believe. And I watched the city growing, and I want to thank the commissioner, the management, for a good job they're doing. But we need to go faster. We need to improve it more. There's lots of opportunity in the city, especially at the marina. So everybody will benefit from it. Speaking about myself too, the city, everybody will be benefiting if we try to bring more businesses to move along and get more people to come to the marina. I'm asking if I can get expansion for my restaurant, if it's possible, as much as I can see other businesses, more restaurants in the marina, because I know I'm by myself here. I'm the only game in this marina as far as restaurant. But I believe if there are going to be more restaurant, more businesses, it's going to bring more traffic, and the citizen of Riviera Beach, they are going to benefit more. We are going to hire more people from the city. We have lots of people working in my place. They live in the city limit here. So please, I would like to see this marina moving faster. I've been here 7 years. I'm doing good, money wise, business wise. I believe almost everybody in this room here has been in my restaurant. We believe I treat everybody good. So I need an opportunity to expand so I can help more citizens of the Riviera Beach and more opportunity for work and improvement. We have a beautiful city, waterfront city. The view from this building here, nothing in the whole Palm Beach County, any city in Palm Beach County they don't have this view like what we have. So we should take advantage of our beautiful city. Let's move on, get more companies or let the city run it so we can rent or lease or do something to improve this place. I do appreciate if you give me the opportunity to expand my restaurant. I'm not going to take all the time because I know you guys have a long night. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Please say yes for me to expand my restaurant. Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
for your comments.
Terrence Davis, followed by Margaret Shepard.
Welcome, Ms. Davis.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone. Good evening to staff. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you guys for the services that you do provide. Whether we agree with you on what you do and how you do it is not the issue. Just the fact you take your time and you go through some diligent questions that you do ask. But I'm concerned with the fact that I've been here on and off all my life. And I remember when I was a little boy, they had a conversation about redeveloping, creating City Place. We were boys at the time. We were young children. City Place has come and gone. Our CRA, as it stands, has about 15 to 17 years, give or take a few, of existence left. The developers, or whoever it is that you choose to move forward, and whatever staff you have delegated moving forward with this, need to have the hearts and minds of the people. I'm going to say it, the hearts and minds of the people. We don't have much time left. Someone is holding this up, or some people, plural. Like the young lady said, I remember she came before the board and she shared her concerns with what was going on. But we want to talk about the jobs. We want to talk about the experiences. We want to talk about the community benefits for the residents of this wonderful community. I drive by all the time with my children. We drive around, and all I see is people coming and enjoying the experience of Peanut Island. But I look forward someday to bringing my children here to stay in and enjoy the experience, whether it's a hotel, whether it's eating ice cream, whether it's continuous experience, seeing my friends and families working day and day, getting contracts and doing a wonderful time. This CRA needs someone that's going to stir this ship forward from a staff position. Someone that can get these developers in the room and make sure that everyone is moving in the same direction on the goal that you set as a commission. That's what this CRA needs. This CRA is more than just a marina. It is a life, a working, living waterfront. They said 90-day extension. 30-day period, choosing some other options. Well, let's put some pressure on making sure we bring the best deal for the city. They talked about parking elements, but we shouldn't be spending no money, more of our money on any parking. We talked about, we done pumped over $30 million of public money into this project. It's time to allow someone, whoever it may be, to pump their money in so we can get some of these jobs and these experiences and we can enjoy what's left of the CRA 15 years. And also, I wish you guys well in whatever you do and take care of the locals and give locals opportunity at the CRA executive director position.
Thank you for your comment, sir.
Margaret Shepherd, followed by Mary Bram.
Margaret Shepherd, Riviera Beach. I am excited about this particular project. It is a piece of waterfront property that we possess. It's a property that our family should be coming to. My nephew and his wife is here. They didn't spend no time in Riviera Beach. They spent the majority of their time in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And for that, I feel very, very sad. If nothing else, the Marina Village, I believe, will hold the best restaurants. I believe it would give us an opportunity to go to the hotels. It would give us an opportunity to showcase not just Peanut Island, but showcase the city of Riviera Beach. I was proud to be a part of this marina. I was very proud to be a part of giving my comments to Mr. Brown, who is CRA director, Tazra. I've been knowing him ever since he was a young kid, now a grown man with a wonderful wife. I believe that this young man can continue to pour into the city to do phase two. We are shuffling our money away. I'm not too happy with the related group talking about the two towers. That part I'm not. But I think that when we have this type of waterfront property, we should be delegating authority to the CRA to make it well with our friends and family. We're sitting here on a piece of property, I guess I want to say diamond in the rough, whatever it is, but I've been doing this for a very long time. And I know I can foresee how beautiful this piece of property is. Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting? Tazra is ready. Give Tazra the opportunity, in spite of everything you're talking about, to move the city forward. We continue to stall. Why are we stalling? If they have the money, I think I read something, they want to start in 2025. Why are we not pushing it? It's time to push. We're taking money from out of the city and we're giving it to somebody else. The money that my family spent in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, it was just shameful for me to hear them talk about. Because I'm here in the city of Riviera Beach. I have nothing to offer but Riki Tiki. And you eat enough of that food, I mean, come on. It's time for fine dining. I listened to Delsa talk about her restaurant. I'm definitely ready for a 5-star event. But it seems like we want to stop and do things that just, to me, unconstitutional. Please allow this particular project to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your comments.
Mary Bram.
Not ready to move on here. Miss Mary Bram, Riviera Beach. I'm going to try to be brief here. Try to be brief. We are a dynamic seaside community. We are in the proximity of the renowned port of Riviera Beach here that does a lot of international business. And the Margarita Villa Hotel and that cruise ship, I'm here to stress on parking. Just like you all move, that agenda item there before we got to this one. I expect to have some open minds here. Across the street over there, last year, you all sold that property over there. 4.4 acres over there. And guess what? Now it's up for sale now for 16 million. Keys Realtor, Chuck Armstrong is the realtor for that property over there. Now you see how you get all convoluted? Instead of doing the things, moving this parking here, we have bonds. And they are on the back of every resident that lives in this city here. Your parking generates revenues, not just for Riviera Beach, but it's all across the municipalities, all across the states, all across the landscape. Your parking here is detrimental to this city here. And shame on you all for not putting this priority in place. We workshopped this proximity for how much we would charge for the parking last year. So we already have perimeters in place here. So this parking here, I think it's about 812. I'm talking off the top of my head because I do read. And you have 800 for public, and you have 100 and something for private, accommodating the hotels. And I'm just going to be brief here, because that live, work, and law here that was passed by the governor, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the state legislature signed Bill 102 into law, which went into effect on July the 1st, known as the Live Local Act. Senate Bill 102 was enacted to fill financial gaps while providing increased availability for affordable housing. Affordable housing is where it's at here now. Affordable because people need places to live. And everybody does not make the same wage that these gentlemen make here.
Big comments,
So
ma'am.
let's move on this parking here.
Thank you.
And let's move on these affordable houses.
Mr. Chair, that is the end of public comments.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
I believe all the board members received a letter from one of the developers from the Sonneblick Group stating that they were out of the project, that they were no longer participating in the project. Is that still the case, Mr. Evans? I know that Mr. Sonneblick is here. Maybe we can ask him personally, is he in or is he out? Because clearly I'm going to use that in my decision process to knowing whether he's still in the project financially and still willing to do the project, or is he out of the project?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
We haven't, the councilperson is correct. I did provide you with a correspondence that we received from the Sonneblick Development Group, effectively separating themselves from the project and the partner in the project. We have not received any correspondence that is contrary to that, but Mr. Evans may be able to provide additional commentary because he did have some discussions, I believe, with the team. But realistically, I think that's a matter that, you know, the Sonneblick team would need to articulate to the board. But as it relates to official correspondence, we only have the correspondence that we shared with you all that was removing them from the arrangement. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, we did receive an email this evening indicating that he had some interest in continuing to try and repair the relationship with APD in the project, which I think is why he's here this evening. But we have the official letter and we don't have anything to change that. But I believe since they're here, that indicates they do have some interest. And the email did indicate that they had some interest in participating if they can work out an agreement amongst believe it was APD.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
can we ask Mr. Sonneblick to tell us on the record whether he's in or out since he's here? And I know he flew in from California, but I think that would be helpful to hear from him and have it on the record.
You're looking for our feedback on that? They can put it on the record if they choose. I don't have an agreement with, Mr. Sonneblick. Our agreement's with APD and
Correct.
Ron Irons and Tesro Group with Tony and Ezra. So, I mean, to have them put on the record that they're in the deal doesn't really carry any weight to what we're discussing tonight. So we can have them come up here and state that, but the discussion that we need to move forward with is getting updates, and I have some questions for them. But by all means, of course, Dr. Spiritus, if that's what you want to hear, we can hear from them, but they're not a partner in this deal. Not with us anyway.
Well, he doesn't get to unilaterally make that decision, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
So let me go ahead and make sure that, it should be a board decision, but I have some concerns.
We'll let Dr. Spiritus finish his concerns because he does want to hear from them, but I agree that the board should make that decision, and that's the pleasure of the board. So were there any additional concerns, Dr. Spiritus, outside of that?
Oh, that's an important issue.
Absolutely. Agreed. So board, do we want to hear from Sonneblick team asking if they're in or out? My concern with that and my sentiments are that a letter was received, an email was received. The only issue we have tonight is that we're in front of our public and this board again, and we have an uncooked product. I don't want to continue to bring this in front of us with a completely uncooked product because now we're asking for additional time, we're asking for additional details. So, Councilman, Commissioner McCoy, you have some concerns, and then we will get back to this comment as well, Dr. Spiritus. Commissioner McCoy?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So, Mr. Scott Evans, do you have the equity allocations for these various elements? As far as, does the E&A actually speak to the allocations of, I guess, the assignment of equity or responsibility?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
And perhaps, Nick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the ENA definitely identifies the different elements and which parties are participating in delivering those on behalf of the co-development team. It doesn't provide the equity, I don't believe, but it provides which parties are working on, and by parties I'm referring to APD and TESRAL, who are the co-developments.
So do we have APD here tonight?
Just to clarify that, Scott, what it does is it breaks down each of the elements with specific timelines for when we're going to present and agree to business terms, right? Just like we did with elements 7 and 8. We brought LOIs, those were agreed to, those were approved by the board. We then went and drafted ground leases, negotiated the ground leases, presented them to the board, they were approved by the board. We have presented a letter of intent back in December for elements 0 through 6. The programming has changed, as you saw at the last board meeting. There were some nuances and changes to the programming and as such, changes to the revenue projections. But no, the ENA does not speak to equity, participation, or breakdowns of the partnership. And to be specific, the ENA is an agreement between the co-developers and the CRA and the city, not an inner partnership agreement among the partners.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking that question, because when I look at this July 16th letter saying that they were seemingly withdrawing themselves from the agreement, I mean, for all I know, Von Aarons and APD could have went in a different direction in terms of financing this. So what I don't want to do, and I think is very much a slippery slope, Mr. Attorney, is you're going to create a situation where you're going to potentially open up exposure for the CRA in a public meeting on the record to really make it very easy for someone to say, now you're interfering with a contractual relationship. Because Mr. Von Aarons is in Mr. Damian Barry is who seemingly this letter is directed to. So, I'm not sure if I understand if you allow someone who clearly has indicated that they're withdrawing without the very person that is the sponsor partner to bring them back in to now interject a counter offer. I mean, that seemingly doesn't even make sense. And we're going to create a situation of potentially having a tortious interference claim. Because for all we know, they could have went in a different direction of financing. And my question is, does APD have someone here or Mr. Irons here to speak on that?
Sure.
Nick, go ahead, please. Adam,
To my knowledge, there's no representatives from APD in attendance at this time.
Okay, well,
And to expand on that, I know Vaughn had some challenges with travel to get here, and so he was not able to make the meeting tonight.
Virtual?
That I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Go ahead, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
So with that being the case, if there's competing proposals, are we to accept it as presented in the staff's Dropbox links as being the current proposal?
What we have, sir, is we have two proposals, one with uncertainty around financing, right? That's the APD proposal, given the uncertainty of the relationship between the partners. And the other is a proposal we got from Tesral, which has components and a framework for the financing of a garage component within Element 6, and then a framework for ground lease terms for a hotel and multifamily component to Element 6 that are subject to additional partners stepping into the transaction to facilitate those developments, with a request for an additional 90 days to solidify those partnerships. But we do not have fully baked agreements or proposals.
Well, absent of Mr. Irons, I think the only thing is the question that you're asking. I think we, in order for us to move forward, there has to be consent from one of the partners that this is still a viable option. So with that being said, I think if Mr. Irons isn't here, I want to hear from Tesral as to where they are with this current plan, because seemingly I don't know how. I mean, it's like a bank, if you will. If you don't bank with Bank of America, you can go over to Wells Fargo. So, I mean, now you're going to say, Bank of America said they want it out, and now we're on our way to Wells Fargo, and then Bank of America interjects themselves back in. I mean, like, we can't make that decision for them. And I think it'd be appropriate if the actual partners who we have the agreement with actually, decides. And I want to hear from Mr. Brown, because it'd be wholly inappropriate for us to allow someone who's sent us notice that they're not in the deal to jump back up here and say, now I have some sort of, I have something new that I haven't heard from the partner that we have an agreement with.
And so what I'd add to that is, you're absolutely right. Mr. Irons and APD could.
I didn't hear you.
You're absolutely right.
Oh,
Mr. Irons and APD could absolutely go back out to the market and find a new financier.
That's why I want to hear from
partner. Correct.
Tesral.
You had a comment, Commissioner?
And you know what? Hold on, Mr. Chair. I don't have time. Hey, my man, listen. I don't have time for people saying they're out and they're in and they're out. Like, literally, let me tell you something. This is like a merry-go-round. Like, if you in the game, you in the game. And what we don't have time is to play. I mean, I think it's been said that we have a time certain on the sunsetting of this CRA. So I don't understand why we would even entertain that. And quite frankly, if I can be honest, and I would love to look at you in your eyes, that's very darn tacky. To show up on the day of the meeting, to say you're back in and you want back consideration, and you want to get up in front of our meeting? I mean, not to mention, we've already been in here for close to 5 hours. A little courtesy, a little professional courtesy, I think is due not just to the commission, but to the very partners. And unless I got confirmation of that, I don't think that's appropriate. And board members, I know we really want to get this done, but not at the expense of doing just what happened in 2018, where the board, because they don't get all of the information, goes into an agreement and this gets forged. And now it's more difficult to work down this path because you have a forged and forced relationship when none of the real elements can be actually hashed out because we're so involved in trying to figure out how to make it work when not realizing that it's a yin and yang situation from the beginning. So I'm not going to, the board, it's my position that we don't do it because I can tell you, I can see where this can go wrong right now. And the exposure is not going to fall on anybody else but the CRA, to the point that we'll never get it developed if someone says that you've now forced this relationship of allowing someone to come in and represent themselves as being our financier without them even speaking to it. So at the very minimum, since APD isn't here, I would love to hear from Tesral since they are the partners that we have an agreement with.
Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner Lanier.
This is really pitiful. We have been doing this for 5 years, 6, matter of fact. 6 years. The city has spent over $1 million for this project. The deadline was July 1st. It was not met. How many times do we have to come to a meeting and keep giving extensions and keep saying, well, this person is going to do this? I mean, it is utterly ridiculous at this point. We look ridiculous. 6 years, same project, nothing. I would like to ask the attorney how much time he has spent on this project. Mr. Could you tell me how much time you spent on this project?
Well, we started as your legal counsel after the project had already started. So, but since then, it looks like about 302 hours on it.
And we still have nothing. We have a situation where people have pulled out of the deal. We have situations, and I say this every single time this comes up. Every single time this comes to the council, it is something different. Every time. It is something different. It is something happened, and it does not take a rocket scientist to figure out that this does not work, that this is not working, that what we're doing is wasting time and wasting money, over $1 million, 300 hours in staff time. At what point do we say this is it? This is enough? And it needs to be tonight. Because from my understanding, there was a July 1st deadline. Then they said, okay, we'll do July 17th. None of it has been met. And this is not just the first time. For the last 5 years, the deadlines have not been met. The last 5 years, deadlines have not been met. And we keep pushing forward. We keep going forward. For what? We got people coming to the city, proposing development that are moving along. They have site plans. They're moving. And we've been with this for 5 years. The project that was previous to this only been here for a year or less. And we've been here 5, 6 years with the same project, and it falls apart every single time. Every time. And I want to ask a question: is why isn't 7 and 8 a part of the termination?
A part of the termination, Commissioner?
Yeah, there's a recommendation that says that they would terminate 0 through 6, but I didn't see anything about 7 and 8. Because my understanding is that, looking at the original RFP, this was all a master development. That means that the master developer would do all of it, because the problem was that we did not want to have projects, one lingering over here, one going over here, and nothing was happening and moving simultaneously. That was the purpose of doing this master agreement. And it hasn't happened. I mean, 0 through 8, none of it. And I've been saying the same thing for the last 5 years. And here we are again with another request for extension. Some of the people have dropped out. What are we going to do? This is crazy.
So if one of my colleagues want to make a motion to terminate this thing and move forward, I will second it because this is utterly ridiculous that we're sitting here at 10 o'clock at night and they're still asking for some concessions about 90 days or, I mean,
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spears?
I'd like to make a motion that we send a 30-day cure notice for 0 through 6 on the Marina project. And hopefully somebody will cure it within that time period.
and I'll second that motion with the question. And I didn't get an answer to why 7 and 8 wasn't a part of that.
And I wanted to comment on that, but I do want to hear from staff as well, because even though, Commissioner, I understand your concerns that we've seen nothing, we're looking to bring almost 600 doors. We're in permitting phase, and that's already been approved process. We're our consultant team. So for us to say nothing is a discredit to the TESRO group, to the APD group, and to Related, who's currently at the table with the first major and largest investment into our CRA history. So I can't discredit that at all, and I'm very excited for what they're bringing because they're currently going through permitting. So that's why I believe that staff doesn't have that in the termination agreement or discussion, because we're going through those steps and that's been approved. And I'm very excited for that because we've put the work in. Some communities take years. It took Lake Park almost 8 years just to negotiate terms to be able to bring that large complex there, where this group was able to do it within the last 2 to 3 because Related actually came in after the fact. So I don't want to discredit the entire project, and I don't want to say that this has been a waste of an investment, because 600 doors is something that is what most communities would never see in their tenure. So we have to give credit where credit's due to staff and also move forward. We don't want to drag our feet or waste time anymore. So if the decision is to go ahead and give an option to cure, we can. But as of right now, I still have to give credit to where we've actually accomplished certain things.
Okay, I still have a question. I still need
Of course, Commissioner, go
I
ahead.
still needed the question from
Staff.
from staff and
Yes, ma'am.
from the consultants about why 7 and 8 is not a part of that termination.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yeah, I can provide some additional comments to that, and then
Wait, hold on, Mr. Evans. Hold on. Answer the question I asked you guys.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to answer that. The both 7 and 8 have executed ground leases, right? So the ground leases now supersede the exclusive negotiation agreement. So Attorney Smith can opine on that, but the ground leases have been executed. They are under the permitting process. They are moving forward with those projects.
Council, could you opine, please?
Yes, I would agree with that, that there are ground leases for those two elements, and those two parts of the project are moving forward. The rest of the waterfront project, which is subject to the agreement that the motion is pertaining to, has not been started yet. So there's no leases signed and there's no contracts done on it so far.
Okay, so we're talking about just the 0 through 6 at this point. And I understand about the ground lease and I understand all of that. But, if I had my druthers, it would be 0 through 8. But I will stay with my second on the 0 through 6.
There's a motion on the floor that's been seconded. There were comments earlier from the board, starting with Dr. Spiritus. If we can revert back, asking for a conversation or a statement on the record. One of our commissioners stated that would not be in the best interest. Dr. Spiritus, did you still want to proceed with that
No,
request?
I withdraw that. Let's just
Thank you.
move on the motion.
Commissioner McCoy, you had sentiments as well, and that you wanted comments from staff, or you wanted to hear from, before we move forward with this motion, you wanted to hear from the TESRO group on their presentation. Do you still want to hear from them?
Yes, but I want to ask a couple questions in regards to the motion that was now
Yes, sir.
proffered.
Go ahead,
So,
Commissioner.
Nick and Ed, Mr. Finelli and Mr. Chapman. So the deadlines, or actually Mr. Scott Evans, perhaps, the deadline that was set forth that Commissioner Lanier is referring to, what was that actual deadline? Because seemingly that's the basis for her, or I think that's the basis for Mr. The chair's.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, not the chair, Commissioner Spears' motion. Am I right?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, I spoke with staff earlier. I believe yesterday we had a briefing, and I asked the consultants and Director Evans what their recommendation was, what staff's recommendation was.
I reclaim my time. I asked a question.
Well,
I was trying to understand the
well,
basis.
that's the basis of my motion was based on the recommendation of staff and based on what I've heard here tonight. So based on that, I am making a motion based on staff's recommendation and my colleague to my left here's comments and recommendation that we send a cancellation notice, a 30-day cure notice on 0 through 6.
Okay, so was staff's recommendation to allow, was it Sonnenblick to,
No, ATP.
excuse me,
and
before you answer, let me finish asking the question so you can be sure to get it correct. Was staff's recommendation to allow Sonnenblick to get back into the deal? Because you seemingly wanted to hear from Sonnenblick a moment ago, but then when questions arrived, now you want to bring a motion forward. So did staff, in a very simple yes or no, did staff insist to have Sonnenblick?
I'm not on trial here,
Commissioners,
Mr.
I'm
just trying to-
commissioners, if we can, just work to the chair and we'll go from there so we can get through this meeting. Commissioner McCoy, continue. I'm sorry. You had a question.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what's his basis for it, because I've heard him want to hear from Sonnenblick, and I'm trying to understand, did staff offer any information as to Sonnenblick's involvement will help this deal? Like, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, because a moment ago we were wanting to hear from Sonnenblick, and then now when I ask questions about does Sonnenblick really have the ability to comment, now the next thing is a motion. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Spiritus, go ahead.
Okay. My basis for wanting to hear from Sonnenblick was that the staff made their recommendations with the assumption that Sonnenblick was no longer part of the deal. And they're clearly one of the largest developers in the country.
Oh, really?
And have the money, yes.
So which staff member
now,
was that?
Please, I'm not going back and forth with you. Let me speak
I mean, you
and then
answered
you
the
let me
question.
speak. I'm not
Commissioners,
going
let's-
back and forth with you.
Let's still
I'm
go
making
through the
my
chair.
comments and then you can make
Commissioner
your
Spiritus,
comments.
go ahead.
No, I'm
Okay.
asking questions. So I think I
You
was
don't have, you're
Commissioner
not the
McCoy, if we
chair.
can
You don't
let-
ask questions.
If we can
The
allow
chair
for
asks
Commissioner
questions.
Spiritus to finish his comments, and then you can respond. Commissioner Spiritus, continue.
Now, based on that, the staff made their recommendation based on the comment that they received from Mr. Sonnenblick, I'm sure, that he was no longer part of the deal. And clearly, the deal doesn't have any financial basis without the Sonnenblick group on that part of the, on 0 through 5, or maybe even 0 through 6 for that fact. But after hearing the comments from my colleague, board member Lanier, I agree with her. This has been going on for 6 years. After hearing what she's saying, I agree. We should give these people their notice, cancel it. If they can't cure in 30 days, let's put it out to bid again. And in that same time period, well, we shouldn't do it in that same time period, but if they don't cure in 30 days, just put out a new RFP and see who responds.
Thank you, Commissioner Spiritus. Commissioner McCoy, additional comments?
So I just want to make sure I understand. So it was based on staff's recommendation, but then also you said from your colleagues. So which staff member was that? So I can ask, because I don't see any kind of recommendations of the sort in the backup.
This was Mr. Evans and Nick as well during my briefing with them yesterday. I know you don't do briefings anymore, but I had the briefing yesterday with the CRA
All right,
staff,
thank you.
and that was
I got
their
it.
recommendation.
So Mr. Scott Evans, your recommendation, you shared with Mr. Commissioner Spiritus that we should throw out elements 0 through 6.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I will provide a comment, then I would refer to JLL, but I do agree with their memo that provides the 3 different pathways that you could go. In fact,
Okay.
I really think there's only 2. I think you can continue to provide more time.
Okay, I'm asking
or
for,
you can,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner,
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to be very succinct and get to the answers, because I'm trying to find out, did staff provide a recommendation to a commissioner that wasn't shared with the rest of the board? Because clearly recommendations from staff are reduced to writing. So your answer would be yes or no, Mr. Scott Evans. And I'm not trying to be hard on you, but like it seems like everybody's dancing around this. Did you provide a recommendation to Commissioner Spiritus about 0 through 6 being thrown out?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
what we outlined in the memo was all of the issues related
All
to
right, I'll
individual.
take that as a no. I reclaim my time. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chapman, Mr. Finelli, do you have a recommendation that you provided to Commissioner Spiritus that has not been reduced into writing to the rest of the board?
We laid out our recommendations in those three paths.
Okay,
right?
thank you, but-
those three paths are the recommendation. We need to choose one of these three paths and move forward.
Mr.
So
Chair,
the termination
Mr.
is one of
Hold
those
on,
three
Dr.
paths.
Spiritus.
Mr. Chair.
Doc-
Okay, I have to speak directly to the staff. When I said to you at the meeting that that probably the best thing to do would be to give them a 30-day notice to cure, and you said to me, yes, we agree. That was the response I received from staff.
Commissioner McCoy?
Okay, so did you commit that to writing?
In our briefing, sir, we walked through the pros and cons of each of the three pathways. So when we talked through the pros and cons of each of the three pathways, it seemed to me that was the direction that our conversation went, and that's how we ended the conversation.
But not in certain terms.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
We did mention in our briefing that the letter from Sonnenblick was one of the very significant things that was affecting our ability to make a recommendation on how to proceed. Additionally, with Tesrol providing information that they did not want to work with other members of the team, and the other members of the potential funding team saying they did not want to work with Tesrol, it was apparent, and the letter from Sonnenblick, that the teams were having a very difficult time in bringing us what we were looking for. And I just like, from their individual perspectives, I think it's disappointing, and I'm sure that they all have their unique perspective on why they couldn't get it done from their own perspective. And I believe that they all wanted to accomplish their own elements. But from the staff's position, I think from this board's position, we're sitting here today without what we asked for, which is a combined proposal. So I think the board has to make a decision whether you want to provide more time or start the process over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I needed.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
Chair, just going to call the
Commissioner, go
vote.
ahead. I did have additional questions. If I could be inclined just to ask this before I make my vote, because this has been a long process, so I just had a few questions for us. Either Ed, Nick, or Scott, did the two groups comply with what we asked them to fulfill? Because we have separate proposals. We gave us a clear timeline at the last meeting. Did either group, either presentation, anything that was provided to us comply with what was requested?
We asked for a comprehensive proposal, and we didn't get one, so no.
Yeah. So we did ask for comprehensive. And the agreements that were sent in, they were separate and apart. We had one from one team and one from another team, and we asked for mutual agreement. Is there a financial impact if we sever our ties?
For the NA, the only financial penalty would be if the CRA was at fault and notice was given that the CRA was at fault. But we would get a 30-day, the CRA would get a 30-day cure period as well. It goes both ways. That financial penalty is up to $200,000 in essentially development costs or pre-development costs incurred by the development team.
So we have two presentations before us tonight. We have the 0 through 6, and we have element 6, a separate presentation, but we asked for a comprehensive proposal from both teams. I do understand, have both teams or either team agreed to the other proposal? Has APD agreed to the element 6 proposal with that the Tesla group submitted?
Clearly, they didn't coordinate with their proposals, right? So there wasn't an agreement in the path forward. We asked for clarification in writing whether or not one group would step away if the other group's proposal was chosen. We got responses that, well, while we didn't fully support this proposal, we would work cohesively from one team, and another team said no, but we'll figure out a path forward. But it wasn't crystal clear as to whether or not there was agreement between the teams of working together.
So to that point, that is actually my biggest concern. And just before we present, whether it's separating presentations, whether one group or the other group, my concern is that it's a required approval and commitment from both teams to be able to proceed. So even if one team presents over the other, if both teams don't come with a mutual agreement, we still can't present. Still cannot proceed because we need a commitment from both teams to be at the table. So that's my only concern with tonight. So I just needed those questions. Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm glad we got that out. So it's just very interesting. And I don't know if, I guess I'm a think tank because I'm sitting here trying to get to the underlying cause of this. And it seems to me, right, that staff specifically, and if I'm wrong, correct me, Mr. Scott Evans, you took the word of someone that is not even a party, or you relied on something from someone that's not even a party to basically ride the coattails into the deal to become the actual financier. And when they couldn't get into the deal, now you're saying to throw it out? If
Mr.
that
Chair?
was the recommendation that I heard Mr. Finelli speak on, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Well, and that's so. I apologize if I'm going to rehash this. That's why I asked. Do you understand why I asked Commissioner Spiritus his motivation for doing that? And when he said he relied on staff's recommendation, so the deal was good when Sonnenblick was there, but when they withdrew, one of your options was it could be terminated because Sonnenblick can't finance this deal. That's precisely what I heard.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
That's unbelievable.
Mr. Chair, that was, we are here today because we don't have a comprehensive proposal from the development team. And to clarify, Mike, our comments, the memo was specifically written to outline all of the issues, and there are many, from the teams not being able to be in agreement. There is no particular deciding factor. There are multiple issues, but particularly to your question, our legal requirement is to negotiate with APD and TESROL on the elements. However, the elements do need to be funded and they need to show who is funding them. So yes, APD and TESROL are the only two official entities that we are negotiating with. However, they have to prove to the agency and to this board that they can fund their projects. And that was the way that APD was proving they could fund their project. So it was a significant factor because APD was relying upon their funding in their proposal.
Mr. Chair, if I can interject,
Attorney Smith, go ahead.
something that was stated earlier that the recommendations were just said from staff to a particular commissioner and wasn't in writing. It was put in writing and it's part of the agenda backup on page 5 and 6 of the backup, the memorandum from JLL. So it was in writing in all of the backup, and it was articulated to Commissioner during his agenda review. So it was in writing in public prior to this meeting, and everything that they said to Commissioner Spiritus was in writing in the memo that's in the backup, page 5 and 6 from JLL.
Okay, thank you. But that's kind of a little bit of a stretch, right? I asked him specifically what was the reason for this. He said he relied on staff's recommendation. What you have in page 5 and 6 are options at this point. So that's more or less not the same. So he kind of represented it as if that was the only option. And that was what staff was presenting for us to use as a recommendation to terminate. But that is listed as an option. Am I right, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure it's on record that it wasn't just articulated to the commissioner. The options were in writing.
Options, not a recommendation. Correct?
Their recommendations, three recommendations,
Three options.
for a recommendation of three options.
There's a difference though, right? Because you know what? I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. There was a motion on the table, properly seconded, and Dr. Spears called the question. I'm sorry. There was a motion on the table that was properly seconded. Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Just seeing if you had any comments. I didn't want to miss you since we can't see you.
No.
Okay, thank you. And to that point, last but not least, we did want to make sure Dr. Spears did give us latitude of having the ability to continue a little bit more with the conversation since this has been a lengthy process. I know there was a request that was withdrawn from Dr. Spears. There was a request from Commissioner McCoy to hear from one of the groups that was a separate presentation. Is that the pleasure of the board? To hear from Element 6 Tesla Group presentation?
No.
No?
That's fine with me.
Miller Anderson, Commissioner McCoy? I'm sorry, Commissioner Spears?
No.
I'm okay hearing the group. This has been a process where we have to just make sure we've done our part. I have no problem hearing from them. But to that point, this is my concern going in, and I would want this question answered at the beginning because I don't want to just go through a lengthy presentation. If we don't have an agreement from both parties, I don't want to waste time with the presentation going in front of our public again to sell them more dreams that's not going to come to fruition. We do not want to waste another moment. So we can hear as requested, but I know that we're having difficulties because we don't have our other person here tonight. So I'm not sure if we've heard from them or if you want to present, Tony.
We'll ask staff if they would load the presentation, and I'll be brief. I'm Tony Brown. I'm one of the partners in Tesla. My other partner, Ezra, he is out of the country and probably flying over the Atlantic as I speak. And if he was here, he would convey how committed we are to this project. You received a proposal from Tesla on 6 because we heard you in June that time was of the essence. Tesla is not a partner or has no viable interest in elements 0 through 5. In the elements, in the notice element, in the exclusive negotiation agreement, APD is responsible for 0 to 5. Mr. Irons asked Tesla's indulgence to negotiate with Sonnenblick for the business terms on 0 to 5, and then they together would negotiate with Tesla on 6. So if a notice is issued, I would request that you differentiate 0 to 5 from 6 and be clear as to what you would like us to cure. The reason why we submitted a separate proposal, not because we're dysfunctional with APD, we each have the same components. I want to differ with staff. I think that Tesla's proposal was over 20 pages. It had a table of contents. It provided a lease for the ground lease parking. It provided business terms for the residential and housing. It provided a pro forma on the parking. JL and your staff is aware of my concerns as early as January that we can't lead with a hotel if we don't have the capacity for parking. And so what you see in this exhibit is Commissioner Lanier asked about 7 and 8. 7 and 8 is in the background. The 10 towers, 7 is under site plan review approval. Element 8 are the residences at the residence at Marina Village. That too is under site plan review. In a conversation today with Related, we are subject to approval of the site plan to be under construction by this time next year. What you see in the foreground is Tezra's proposal for the hotel and parking. Something occurred 2 months ago that was of significance. What was significant was that the attorney opined that we can do a ground lease greater than 50 years. The only difference that you see in the previous plans that we submitted, instead of hotel and parking on 6, you have hotel and residences on 6. The reason why we can, and this was in Tezra's proposal, is we need to negotiate the terms of the parking garage. The parking garage is 812 parking spaces, of which 650 spaces would be public parking. That's the illustration of what we presented, substantially different than what was presented by APD Sonnenblick last month and even in their proposal for July 1st. We talk about all the elements. 0 to 5 is an APD responsibility. We have supported APD. We have supported APD in their request to you to modify the plan. Tezra's last delivery to you, we have met our commitment on 7 and 8. Tezra's last responsibility in this co-partnership is the delivery on 6. And as I said to you last month, you cannot activate the waterfront until we solve for parking. And our proposal to JL and your staff was detailed on the parking. We proposed to subdivide 6 into 3 parcels. They received lease terms on the parking garage, business terms on the housing and residential parking. The reason the 30 days that we want to know, my investors want to know the terms and conditions of the parking garage. If that, then we're done. And because your staff already has a proposal, a pro forma, a red line lease, a financing commitment, a letter of interest for financing, they could be back in 30 days. So if the notice to cure is to element 6 related to Tezra, then what I would be asking in that 30 days, can your staff make a recommendation on the proposal we gave them to parking? Because the ground lease for the housing and the residential starts on the day that construction starts for parking. Many of you know I'm a former banker. We could not get financing, whether it's a Compass Hotel, whether it's a Marriott Hotel, whether it's Mrs. Brooks' restaurant, if we can't show that there is parking. And so I say to you, and I pledge to you, as I did last month, that the Tezra plan, we took the back seat. We're going to take the front seat. If in this plan, if Sonnenblick is back in, we'll talk to him. If Sonnenblick is out, that's fine. Whatever was happening with 0 to 5, the letter of resignation is addressed to Mr. Berry and APD. It is not addressed to Tezra. We have represented from day one that 0 to 5 is an APD responsibility. 6 is a joint responsibility with APD Tezra. Our commitment to you, we heard you last month. They have a complete package from Tezra as to how we would deliver what you see here. So if you issue a notice, one, I'd hope you separate them so we can be clear on what to cure. And if 30 days, I am saying to you directly, your staff has our proposal for parking because everything cascades from there. And if you don't, if we can't negotiate the terms for parking, and if I can't demonstrate to you, or we can't demonstrate to you that we can provide public parking spaces, because it's not an issue of whether or not we will pay for our own private spaces, because our proposal to your staff say that we will. That's a $7 million number. The cost of 652 parking spaces for your public is $30 million. And the terms and conditions with which we will finance that has been presented in details. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your patience. You have been wonderful. We are committed to finishing this. And if you think that our time is up or that the opportunity to cure, our issue for curing, as we indicated here, is that we're going to start with parking, because parking is going to activate the hotel and the residents, and parking is going to activate your waterfront. Thank you very much.
Okay. I believe, Mr. Evans, you said that we have another individual on the line.
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
if it is the board's pleasure, I believe Mr. Irons is available telephonically. We just provided him with the link, so he may be on at this point.
Okay. Is he logged in yet, Mr. Irons?
He's not on here yet.
Okay. And did he send in for a representative of, did he talk to staff, say that he was coming? Do we have a representative? I know that they have letters with D-Berry Enterprises. They're here, but I don't think they're a representative on behalf of Vaughn. And if they are, then we want to just be able to hear from them. The reason is in agreement to what we have at the table. If they'd be willing to discuss the terms or even come to an agreement with what was just presented by Tesla Group, because ultimately we would still need an agreement from both parties, which, being that they've submitted separate proposals, I'm sure that they have not considered each other's proposal. So I'm not sure how to proceed, board. I know that there was a motion on the table that's been properly seconded, and I'm sure, Commissioner, that's where we're going with this, but I wanted to make sure we've looked at every option before taking this vote.
Chair.
Commissioner, go ahead.
And I understand that if we were in year 1 or 2. I understand that wholly, but we are in year 6. And if it has not gotten done in this time. Now, when I asked the question about a master developer, that was Tesla. That was the master developer. That means that it's their job to work with whoever is going to do the elements, period. That didn't happen. So we're right back to where we were in the beginning, where when AP on the bid originally, and then they made them merge into one entity. I mean that we started out wrong. So now we're here at the 9th hour, and the recommendations from the consultants and from the staff is 3 options, and we need to cut bait and we need to move to be able to get this project done. Period. We are in a position where I would understand it if it had been, 6 months, or it's been 6 years. So what has not gotten done thus far is not going to get done, because every single meeting, it's a delay. It is a 60 days, 90 days, every single meeting. So what make us think tonight is going to be any different after 6 years? It isn't. It isn't. So we have to be able to get this thing built, period. And if we're looking at our constituents, if we're looking at the public, if we're looking at our residents, they are asking what is wrong with us, that we're sitting here discussing a deal that has been on the table for 6 years. That's crazy. So I just think that we need to move forward, and we need to be able to recover quickly. That means that you got a 30-day cure. If it doesn't happen, we move on to the RFP. It's just that simple.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, and before you go in, I do, and I hear my colleague has been consistent with her sentiments, but even with this process, we have to really not discredit this project. The residents were able to get something accomplished where we do have a lease agreement executed. We have $225 million invested, the largest investment into our CRA ever. So I'm not going to continue to take to discredit that. So this has been accomplished by this board, and we were able to get major housing opportunity. If this portion or this phase is not able to be completed, then we just keep it moving. But I'm not going to go back and forth and say we weren't able to accomplish anything, because the residents will receive affordable workforce and market rate housing on the waterfront. That's an amazing accomplishment, and that's going to be coming to our board and the city. Mr. Evans, you go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Irons is now on the line.
Chair.
Councilwoman, Commissioner, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I'm not discrediting what has happened. Not at all. I mean, we've done, but what happens is that this kind of back and forth, this kind of missing deadlines, it overshadows what we're doing. It overshadows everything. You have to keep reminding the public of what it is that is happening or has happened or is currently happening because this type of stuff that's happening tonight continues to happen and it overshadows the whole deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
Go ahead, Dr.
are we going to hear from Mr. Irons?
Mr. Irons, are you there?
I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to join electronically. I apologize for not being there in person, as it may have been stated to you. The IT issues on my flight yesterday was canceled and it hasn't been rescheduled, and I wouldn't have been able to be there in person on time.
Thank you.
What I would say about the proposal is, essentially we did what we were asked to do in the previous meeting. We did submit our entire package for elements 1 through 5, as well as our proposal for element 6, which is consistent with the site plan that we attempted to introduce in the last meeting. We turned in our new performas. We did our additional new market analysis. We worked directly with Jones Lang LaSalle on that analysis. All of our commitments to the city in reference to the number of hotels, in reference to the placement, we took all of your suggestions to relocate Margaritaville back to element 6. We rediscussed with Margaritaville their preferences versus 1, 5, or 6. We made all the adjustments based on the feedback that we heard from you. Our team focused on the deal points. We submitted those deal points. We stand behind the analysis of your consultant and your staff in reference to the deal and the deal points. We presented a deal that we were prepared to execute on July 1st when we presented it in good standing. Subsequent to that, I think there were some additional things that were less than favorable that occurred during the negotiations. But you can ask your staff, commissioners, not one point in time did we alter, change, make an adjustment to what we presented by the deadline. We still stand behind our ability and preparation to deliver on that. As you can look out in the audience, the signing book team is there and present. They stand behind what we submitted and their ability to deliver. And so if there are any questions about our submission or our commitment or ability to deliver, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Questions for Mr. Irons? Additional comments from the board? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
What is the motion?
The motion that Dr. Spirit has
It's
made.
been so long. What happened?
The motion Dr. Spirit has made, I believe you seconded.
Yes.
For curing, terminating 0 through 6 and curing the item.
I got you. I'm sorry, Chair. Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
No.
Chair Lawson.
No.
That vote passes 3-2 with Vice Chair McCoy dissenting and Chair Lawson dissenting.
Thank you. Before we go on to the
Mr.
next
Chair,
Attorney Smith.
we need a little more direction.
That would, then, so just making sure that it's clear with the direction that that was given by this recommendation by the board. I'm assuming that staff is not clear.
So there's a letter of termination will go out from us to the parties as master developers. Are we to proceed, staff to proceed with anything else during the 30-day period?
Chair.
Go ahead.
I think that, both of the parties came up and said that they could fix it. So, the 30-day cure is if they can fix it in 30 days, then fine. If not, the staff needs to be working on a revised RFP.
And I guess that's staff and also one of the speakers that asked, what does that 30-day cure look like?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Well, I don't think we should be preparing another RFP right now. I think we would have some liability with respect to the agreements that are in place. I think that we should be giving them a 30-day cure, and then it's up to the staff to come back and tell us whether or not all of the requirements have been adhered to that they've asked for.
So what options do they have to cure if we're going to give them a 30-day cure? And that's where I dissented, because I don't think that we had clarity within the motion as to what was our expectation. We're giving notice for 30 days, notice of termination, but what is the option of curing? And I'm assuming legal or our consultants would be able to answer for that. What do they have the ability to cure?
Mr. Chair, I can answer that.
Go ahead, thank you.
It's an agreement to business terms. So it would be us presenting a letter of intent that's agreed to by staff and the development team in 30 days.
That's supplemented by a comprehensive development plan as requested by the memo by JLL staff.
Mr. Chair.
Is that Mr. Irons? Go ahead.
It is. Given this particular circumstance, Mr. Sonnenblick is in the room. He hasn't had an opportunity to speak. With the assistance of Mr. Sonnenblick and Mr. Berry, it'd be great if you could give them an opportunity, since they have committed to financing the project. And I think some of the stated concern was the potential termination by Mr. Sonnenblick due to the confusion. And I think moving toward giving us guidance on a cure, hearing from Mr. Sonnenblick and his representative may give you an ability to be more specific with us about what you'd like to see regarding a cure, or if we've already presented a cure at this point in time. If you're willing to give him, 2 or 3 minutes to share some comments with you.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Chair,
Commissioner.
this is what I'm asking, because I think that the consultant said that there was supposed to be an agreement between these parties. The agreement didn't happen. So I'm assuming the cure is to make that happen. Now, if Sonnenblick wants to say something in that defense, I guess so. But they said they terminated the relationship. So I don't know what that would accomplish, in a sense that they have to, if it's going to be cured, then they would have to go back to the table with their partners and make it happen. But if not, then we look at other options. Is that what I'm? Okay.
So to that point, Commissioner Lanier, you want them to go back, cure whatever they're going to cure, and then they can speak and present at the next meeting?
If they can, yes.
Thank you. Are we in agreement with that, board?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Dr. Spears.
I have no objection to hearing the Sonnenblick group, part of the Irons, the ATP group. They came out here from California. The least we could do is give them 3 minutes to speak.
Commissioner McCoy?
I'll go with 5 minutes.
Mr. McCoy?
Okay, I want to make sure I'm okay to go. So that's cool if they speak, but let's talk about what are we expecting to come from this? If they're the financier, they have no legal standing. At this point, notice is going to be issued to the development team. I'm not sure what to expect. If Mr. Irons has already said that they're committed as a financier partner, how does that change or how does that further clarify what's the deficiencies that's going to have to be brought back here today to satisfy this board's decision that was just made? Other than giving me some pie in the sky conceptual idea that they want to be the financier, cool. I don't want to waste time. There's nothing that I could possibly hear from these guys who's in today and out tomorrow and back in again. I think we need to make sure that we're clear as to what our expectations are. If they can't deliver, the board has made a decision to move on. That's it. But there's nothing possible at this point that can be actually explained. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would be in agreement with Commissioner Dr. Spiritus and Commissioner Lanier. Commissioner Miller Anderson, did you have a preference to allowing for this team to speak? Von Irons, one of the partners that's going to be curing, is asking for them to be heard.
I'm fine with them speaking.
Okay, thank you. If we can hear from the Sonneblick group, I believe. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. And council members and commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to talk, and I'll be very clear to address specifically, Mr. McCoy, what you're talking about. First step, as Councilwoman Lanier has repeatedly talked about in meetings, there has been for the last 7 years issues with what she refers to as middlemen being involved in this deal. That has been our biggest obstacle, specifically the fighting between those middlemen and the kind of, as you see, separation now of those middlemen. Proposals that have been given to staff separated for you as part of this. We are very interested in this project. We have gotten to the point where we are ready to put $200 million into your waterfront, assuming that you are, and everybody is able to solve this issue that's there. The first thing that was pointed out by Nick and staff, by separating 6 away from us, Margaritaville has made it very clear, and I am the person working directly with them, the boat, and Margaritaville Hotel Corporation. They want to be on 6. It's a very simple concept. That is the parcel that is closest to their boat. That makes sense from a real estate perspective. In terms of location, by separating that out and having one developer do 6 and the other developer do 0 through 5, it essentially ends your own project for yourself. So the fighting that's happened between Tezrel and APD has been a huge obstacle for us. We have just today received a revised document from APD that now works for us. Mr. Evans has received a previous rescission letter because we didn't get anything from APD. We now have that. We have informed staff that we now have a working document with APD. I apologize. I am going to repeat that so it's on the record. We have informed staff today that we have received a document with APD that now works for us, which means in terms of our financing, they're finally ready and they are going to work things out between themselves and Tezrel on some basis, or the city is going to do that. But we are committed with them to spend $200 million on your waterfront. In spite of all the things that have happened, we like this project and we are ready to move forward on this project. And Margaritaville is ready to move forward with us on this project. One more very important thing, and staff and JLL have not yet had a chance to go through this, but in our project, we have, for example, a 900 car parking garage. We are not looking to the city for $1 of money to fund the construction of that garage. We are going to fund that garage. If anybody gives you a proposal, for example, on parcel 6, where they're asking you to put up $10 million and put up another $20 million of shortfall guarantees, I am saying on the record right now, we are not asking you for any of those things. Very different. And I hope now that we are back in, staff can use our proposal with APD to compare that to the other proposal. The bottom line to all of it, and this is just a conclusion, we remain very interested in now moving forward. The timing was difficult, but we sent staff an email today, Damien passed that on, where we and APD have now come to an agreement, and the APD proposal that you have is now a valid proposal, should you be interested. I think that's a fair statement to characterize our status on the project. And I am happy to discuss any part of this project with council.
Thank you, Mr. Sonnenblick. Commissioner McCoy had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Sonnenblick.
Yes.
Thank you for your statement. Are you privy to the arrangement and agreement with APD and Tesraw?
Superficially, not all of it, but superficially. I'm not a party to it, if that's what you're asking.
No. I said, are you privy to the arrangement? Do you know what the arrangement is? And I don't know what
superficially.
Maybe I need to Google that up.
I'm sorry, a little bit.
Well, I'm gonna repeat my question. So you don't know what their arrangement is, but you're gonna sit here and suggest. Let me finish first.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I think the very thing that I tried the board not to do, you just did. Like, you don't know their agreement. You don't know what these two parties have. You're a third party, and you're sitting here now suggesting your path forward as to what you're going to do to make this work when you're not even aware of the existing agreement.
No, I'm aware of it.
Well, that's what I asked you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I'll re-answer your question.
Do you see what you just did though?
Mr. McCoy, I'm happy to re-answer your question now that I understand your question.
But you're speaking of APD.
Yes.
But I asked you, did you know the agreement with them? So are you speaking also for Tesraw?
No, definitely. I'm not speaking for Tesraw. No.
1 + 2 still equals 3. But I'm trying to understand, how is it that you're sitting here saying if we have these co-developers, you're not privy to their actual agreement or their apportionment, but you're sitting here negotiating at least one part of it. Doesn't that create a problem if you don't have Tesraws at the table?
I cannot move forward. Yes, actually, wait a minute. You're correct. I'm agreeing with you. I can't move forward on 6 because of the current agreement. You are correct. Wait, I want to say that on the record, please. You are correct, and I'm agreeing with you, and that's been our problem.
But that's your problem?
Yes.
But you're not even a part of the deal, though. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I can't move forward and build Margaritaville on parcel 6 because of the current agreement.
I would submit to you, Tesraw will say the same exact thing because of what you just stated.
Right,
they
we're in
can't move
agreement.
forward with doing this because you're sitting here now trying to interject something. And that's why I asked you, have you had this understanding with Tesraw? And members, I think this is what I was afraid of. You're really now creating this tortious interference position. That, like, You don't know their agreement. You've acknowledged that on the record. You have no agreement with Tesral.
No.
Seemingly, you have none with APD,
We
other
haven't-
than LOI. Which,
and we have an
wait, hold
LOI.
on. That just came back on this afternoon.
Yes.
I mean, come on, help me out. Like, how do I make a decision based off of, this seeming like you guys changed as much as the wind's direction?
Well, we haven't changed the terms from what's been
Sir, you
submitted to
sent us a
staff.
letter last week saying you were out. Now you're saying you sent an email to staff that you're back in?
Yes.
Okay.
But you are correct.
No, I'm not. I don't know I don't know
know,
development, but I do know fundamentally, if I have an agreement with somebody else, if somebody else comes in and interjects something that's not a party to it, even if they're well intentioned and it causes me harm, that just put all of us as the board in the middle of this whole situation where we're now allowing this. And what I'm not trying to do is go back to 2018, where a relationship is forged and now we're stuck trying to untangle this web which lasts 2-3 years. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McCoy, Commissioner Spiritus, go ahead.
Mr. Sonnerblack, so you heard the resolution that was passed by the board tonight?
I did.
Do you believe that within 30 days, you're going to be able to cure 0 through 5?
Yes.
Without any question?
Yes,
correct?
absolutely.
Okay. Number 6, you do realize that if you can't come to terms with the two master developers, the two teams there, that we're going to send this out again. You're going to be in.
Yes.
You didn't cure, and we're probably going to put out a new RFP more than likely.
That's the right thing to do. Yes.
Right. Okay.
I agree with that, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. So, but you will still go ahead with 0 through 5?
We will, and we'll also be interested in 6 when it's put back out.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Additional comments from the board? Okay. So to that point, thank you, Mr. Sonneblick, and thank you for your commitment to the city and your interest. The resolution was passed tonight, so we will see you guys in 30 days.
Terrific.
Thank you.
We will be here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Just to clarify, there was a vote that passed, not a resolution.
I apologize. Thank you, Commissioner. The vote was passed tonight to move forward. So thank you. Thank you both.
Excellent.
Board, we have an update from staff, which is item presentation discussion of Q2 report. Do we want to table that till next meeting so we can go into our last item?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Mr. Evans?
I can do both those items in less than 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see this.
Let's see that happen.
30 seconds you have.
All right, Mr. Chair, if I may, the second quarter report is published on the agenda for the purposes of making sure we memorialize it in the public record and is available on our website. And certainly the board, when they have the time, can effectively look at the report. And then staff would make sure that it is provided to you moving forward. If there's no other questions, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move on to the next item.
Thank you.
The next item is an update concerning the discussions and the negotiations with the Forest Development Group. We've made significant progress concerning the response of the unsolicited proposal. You can see that we received a correspondence from the Forest Development Group on July 17th. We have volleyed back and forth with them. They responded to a memorandum that we shared with them. This is the letter on the 17th is a response to that, and we believe that probably in the next 30 days that we can have something before this board to effectively move forward with subsequent steps in the process concerning the validity of the solicitation. They have made some significant progress, and there's some value with regards to what they are presenting to the CRA. So staff is just requesting that the board grant an additional 30 days to respond to the unsolicited proposal and schedule it to come before the board at your meeting in August.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
So I make a motion that we give an additional 30 days to Forest Development on their unsolicited proposal.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I do have a comment card for item number 2.
Thank you. Let's hear the comment card.
Terrence Davis.
Welcome, Ms. Davis.
I was anticipating a presentation to see what direction was going on with the unsolicited proposal, to see, is this something you guys are going with? Is this something that's going out on the street for someone else to respond to? That's all it was this time, for time's sake. That's all.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Evans, if you wanted to address those comments.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to state statutes, if we deem it as a responsible solicitation, it is required to be publicly advertised for a period of 30 days. And then that will come back before the board for the purposes of entertaining any additional proposals before the disposition of the property moving forward. So yes, it will be a public process.
So just for clarity, I believe that there was a motion made for an additional 30 days to negotiate terms with the Forest Development Group. So when will this be back before us? What date are we looking to have this before us?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I would say your most likely is your second meeting in September 11th? September 11th.
September 11th would be an additional 30 days. Who is going to be negotiating these terms, Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
It is myself and Mr. Evans.
Okay. Now, in the interim, we're going to be discussing our next item, which is going to be the executive director position. Board, that's the conversation I wanted to have when we go through these negotiations, because if we're going to have our current staff and our director and assistant director negotiating terms and we bring in a new director, what does that do to the negotiations, and what expectations do we have? I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into this project with having this go out to the public, but I do want to make sure that we're clear so that when the new director starts, they're not handcuffed to whatever was negotiated, what terms were negotiated by our outgoing director.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
The city is also a party to this particular agreement from the standpoint is that a lion's share of the property does belong to the city. So invariably, if there is another person that occupies this seat, certainly we'll work in concert. And invariably, what we want to do is get to the best deal holistically for both the city CRA. So I will work with whomever sits in the seat.
Absolutely. And just to my only concern is that I do not want to have any delays with this when we bring a new director in. At the same time, I don't want to have the terms negotiated without giving them the opportunity and flexibility to negotiate in the best interest of the CRA, which I do know that you will do, Mr. Evans, but it's just making sure everybody's on the same page and there's no confusion. Motion's on the table and been properly seconded. Additional comments from the board? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier.
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus.
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy.
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. Discussion by General Counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to go over the steps that have been taken thus far with the interviews for the executive director position. Thus far, a committee was formed, and it came forth with 5 recommendations for people to go to the second stage of to go to the first stage, I guess, of the interview process. There was a recommendation of 5 people. Of the 5, 1 received 5 votes and 4 received 4 votes. After that, there was a big drop off. A lot of people received 1 vote, 1 vote, 1 vote. So there was a clear delineation of the first 5 people that the committee recommended. And what I'd like to do to go forward is to, 1, have a vote on the 5 candidates to schedule for a vote. Secondly, get any other recommendations from council persons for people to add to go forth with a virtual interview. After we get the list together, there's a couple of direction items I need. One is a virtual interview date. It was suggested July 31st, 2024. That will be next Wednesday. A start time for the interview will be based on the amount of people interview and time increments for each interview. Again, really based on the amount of interviews that will be done. And then we'll need to set a date for the in-person interview for the top 3 persons to be interviewed in person. Next week's interview would be by virtual. That will be the first round. The second round will be after those virtual interviews. Um, we'd ask this board to break it down to 3 people to come in for in-person interviews and a date for that before deciding on so this board can vote for an executive director. So to begin with, I'd like a vote on the. Well, are there any questions so far?
Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Smith, so I guess we're just going to gloss over the discussion I had with you last week.
Are there any questions that you want me to answer on the record?
Okay, do you really want me to ask you?
Sure.
Is it okay for a member of the bar, an attorney, to sit in a virtual meeting on the 28th of June with staff, with a committee that has been appointed, in a meeting that wasn't advertised or open to the public, where direction and seemingly nobody kept a record of, allowed, and then information came out of that meeting, they were allowed to then go back and work on scoring, and then even one member who wasn't even properly appointed came forth and offered up a score sheet and did not even attend the actual meeting? How can you do that?
Well, Mr. McCoy, the meeting which you determined for the first part of your questioning, the meeting was a meeting put together to put the committee members, let them know what information they were going to receive. There were no decisions.
It doesn't matter.
It does, sir.
Mr. Smith, you cannot meet as anybody, whether or not a decision is made or not, whether or not there's official action. If you go into a workshop where everybody just listens, that is subject to 286 of the Florida statutes. So it doesn't matter, and I can tell you, you don't have to look at case law. The Florida Sunshine Law Manual shares that any meeting where members discuss anything that's going to come before the body, which it did, it actually was scheduled, and I have the actual news articles. I'm sorry, the advertisement in the newspaper where it was scheduled to come before the body on the 8th and then again on the 10th, and they convened in a virtual meeting that was outside of the public. And you're going to sit here and put your license on the line and say that that was legitimate and legal?
I did not.
So if
when I said it didn't matter, it didn't matter in the fact that there were no decisions made.
But the public doesn't know that. So because it wasn't recorded and there was no information that came out in terms of minutes, how can you've deprived me of my right, and that's caused me irreparable harm to participate in it. So for all I know is you could have laid out the actual convention of how they should vote. And when I looked at it, right, that was the very first thing that I thought of. Why do we have such an anomaly that out of 6 people, 5 all have selected this one person? And that's what prompted me to start asking questions. Not to mention, this whole entire committee was not the committee that the board voted on. So in itself, that was not even an authorized committee because you had someone on there that was not an appointee by the board. Nor did the board give direction to staff to have that position specifically substituted. In fact, the June meeting, I asked the board members to reconsider that appointment of the two staff members that was on there, and the board chose not to take any action. So you're going to suggest to me that this is proper, Mr. Smith?
If you allow me to answer, then I'll give you my full explanation. But every time I try to answer it, you cut me off. So to give you the full explanation, sir, is the meeting in which direction was given to the committee members of when they will receive their information and the dates. That was, by determination, a sunshine law violation, but it was a de minimis violation. Every violation under the sunshine law is not a criminal violation. Every violation of the sunshine law isn't curable. It is very curable, and it was a mild violation of the sunshine law that's curable right now because there were no decisions made. And if there is a decision made, there will be evidence of that decision. You have no evidence of a decision being made at that meeting. What evidence would you put forward that a decision, any decision whatsoever, was made at that meeting? There was no decisions made at that meeting. That meeting was actually a meeting that could have been an email, but it was a meeting just to let people know when they're going to get that information. And if you look at the Sunshine Manual, you will see that every violation of it is not a criminal or a non-curable offense. That meeting is very curable right now to say that nothing was done. And so that was a violation of, I think it was a sunshine law violation, but nothing was done. The cases in which was cited or that have been contemplated, there were decisions being made at those meetings. There's no decisions were made at the virtual meeting, and there's no evidence, not one scintilla of evidence of any decisions that were made at that meeting. It was a one-way flow of information saying that this is the information you're going to get. These are the dates. There it is. There's no evidence that anything was decided at that meeting. So that's the first issue. Second issue is supplementing a person on the committee. That is an issue that was done. At the end of the meeting, you stated that you did not think that employees should be on there and there should be another CRA director. And the staff made that change without it being a vote of this commission. So a per CRA director was added to the meeting, and that is a concern. A way to cure that is to, if you want to, either accept the recommendations of another CRA director or to throw those recommendations out. If you were to throw those recommendations out, the same five would still be nominated tonight to move forward in the process. Because again, there was a clear delineation between the first five and the rest of the persons. So throwing out the recommendations of the person in particular would take William Corbin down to four votes, Lisa Nichols down to 3 votes, and R.D. Jones to 3 votes, which would still make them in the top 5, along with Giovanni Moss and Michelle Long. So your 2 points are valid, but they're not they're not dispositive of the issue that we should throw it out, because the first one of the meeting is a de minimis violation that no decisions were made or no work conducted at that meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. McCoy.
Okay, so seemingly, right? And maybe I didn't get it correct from the office manager, but I specifically asked, was there training? Was there any kind of directions or rubric provided? If you've provided direction to board members, if you provided an expectation of what this process should look like, the public has a right to know what that is without it actually being specifically recorded, captured, or even at the greatest opportunity, the public having the right to participate. You clearly have created a situation, Mrs. Smith, where we don't know exactly what direction. I don't know if you recall, but there was 2 members on the city council in this very city that decided to talk about very similar in some sort of personal conversation who would now take the role of being the new appointee over at that time it was called the MPO. So whether you agree with it or not, I think that's up to an actual prosecutor to determine. But one of them was criminally charged because they had a conversation outside of a public meeting, and one of them mistakenly slipped and stated that he had this conversation with another board member, and they were criminally charged. And you're sitting here going to and roll the dice with 5 members. Many of them, think about this, many of them, 3 out of the 5 aren't even employees of the agency. That's a heck of a gamble, Mr. Attorney, that you're going to roll the dice. And I'm telling you, the very thing that you're speaking of happened in the same agency. The fact is, why should I believe anything that staff says if they don't even have the competency enough to bring this to a public meeting? As far as I'm concerned, because I missed the May meeting, I was actually out of the country, and I tuned in on YouTube when I was able to actually land to see what the results of that meeting was. And I'm saying to myself, the board just went right along with staff's recommendation. When I came back in June, offered up my opinion again at another meeting, which was not at a regular scheduled meeting time, which is another issue in itself, Mr. Smith. So like you keep creating issue after issue that things are done in violation of the board's direction, in violation of state law, or in violation of our own bylaws, and you're saying for some reason or another that it can be cured or it's still okay. Mr. Smith, I would really challenge you. You might want to check Palm Beach County's court docket on Broderick McCoy, because I promise you, I would not want to gamble with someone's freedom. And I promise you, I got plenty of time. That's all I have. I'm going to go ahead and exit the meeting, and you guys can decide.
With Commissioner McCoy leaving, that takes us out of the quorum. We would not be able to pass or make any motions tonight, but we can continue our meeting for discussion purposes. I'm not sure if Dr. Spiritus, if there's any additional comments.
Mr. Chair, before I leave, do you hear what he's suggesting? He's really saying that it's okay to break the law, and we had staff to drive this.
If you
I can't
could
believe
wait,
this.
if you could, I did have comments, so if you could give us like another just 2 minutes, because my concern is, and I had the same sentiments with it being de minimis violation and minimizing the concerns. And as I spoke to you, Attorney Smith, I just want to make sure that you did and you're taking accountability for staff's approach. So I don't want to minimize the concern of my colleague. I want to make sure that we're all clear with that there was a violation, regardless of minimal or not, and the substitution of the individual into the committee was done improperly. So I just want to make sure that that's on the record so that we can clearly state what happened and then how do we cure moving forward. Because I don't want to offset the fact and disregard my colleague's concern, because it is very concerning.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
But
No, I don't want to hear
moment.
from
What-
Mr. Evans. I definitely don't.
One moment, Mr. Evans. So, but actually we do, before you do leave, Commissioner McCoy, we do still have Ms. Miller Anderson here, so we do still have a quorum to proceed, but I do want you to stay just briefly, if you can, for 2 more
No,
minutes.
sir. I did not want to get in this meeting and start implicating. And Mr. Evans, if you sit up here and talk and you directed your staff member to do it, I promise you, bro, I will have a complaint filed at 9 a.m. when the courthouse opens.
You threatening me, sir?
I will have a complaint
Are
filed.
you threatening me, sir?
I
Oh,
will
excuse me,
have a
Point of
complaint
order.
filed.
Excuse me, order.
Because
Point of
what
order.
We have a point of
Chair.
order.
Mr. Zier shared with me that
Commissioner McCoy,
you
we
and
have a
her
point of order on the
decided
table.
to substitute a member that was appointed at the board's direction.
Councilperson, didn't you say that we should have a CRA director on there?
But Mr. Evans, when I offered it up, you cannot unilaterally usurp the board's authority.
Sir, that was.
Can we, I'm sorry, can we please go through the chair? Let's still get some order. We have a point of order on the table. Commissioner Miller Anderson, you have been recognized.
Look, we're
Thank
either gonna deal with this item or we're not gonna deal with the item. I
Thank you.
think we're getting very off into an area that we don't need to go into at this moment.
And to that
Um,
point, I want to run through the chair. So thank you, and I agree, Commissioner Miller Anderson.
But one
Mr.
thing,
Chair?
oh, you just
Hold on.
said that
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
we
Commissioner
don't,
Miller Anderson.
we won't, you can't count me in your quorum. I don't think you have to have 3 present.
You're not being here, Madam Councilperson, is a medical excuse, and so you can appear virtually according to the Attorney General's decision after the COVID. Uh, After COVID, they said that everyone has to be in person unless you have a medical excuse. Then you can appear virtually. And so, because you are claiming a medical excuse, you can appear virtually and count towards it.
But to that point, I don't believe we can count that towards the quorum because we've had this
No,
discussion.
you can't
already.
count it towards a quorum, though.
Right.
No, I can
Did
vote, yes,
Commissioner
because of the,
Lanier
Yeah,
leave?
she stepped out. Yeah, so that's
Did
why I was saying.
she left the meeting.
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
I believe she's left for the evening. I'm not sure if she's coming back, but
She's gone.
that's why I asked Commissioner McCoy before he just exited to make sure we just had clear
Okay.
direction. If you could give us if you just give us a few more minutes, Commissioner.
If I can answer, so I did state, and let me state again, that the meeting in which the information was sent out was a sunshine law violation. I feel that it was a sunshine law violation. So let me just put that on the record. Secondly, the substitution of a director, that is something that the board should has to deal with and come up with a. We look for board direction on what to do about that. Um, on what you would like to do with the committee as a whole, or just deal with that particular substitution and dealing with that staff situation. But I did state, and I did not, want to imply that it was not a sunshine law violation. I did state it was a sunshine law violation.
Okay. So proceeding with the concerns that my colleague has addressed, I want us to just proceed with moving forward on how do we select our individuals. We have applicants that came before the board. There are concerns with the selection committee. I would give a recommendation that we come back with our own selections outside of these board members.
Is that a motion, Mr. Chair?
More of a discussion before we make a motion. I wanted to leave it open before I make the motion. Did we have any feedback on that?
On what exactly?
We select our own top 5 and we come back before the board with our selection.
I would like that.
I agree, Mr. Chair.
So,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Miller Anderson.
I mean, however the majority would like to move, and obviously if we want to keep some of the top 5 that was in there, then we could do that as well. We always did have the option to add or take away anyway, so I
Correct.
think it
So
would be the same thing.
just for clarity, so we can give a clear timeline, because we do have candidates that are still watching. We do want to make sure that they're aware of what the steps in their process are, and they're anxiously waiting. So if we select our own top 5, we will, I'm assuming, narrow this down, and we will interview the top 5 candidates. How are we going to actually get this done? Are we okay with just bringing our 5 and then interviewing the candidates? If we have overlap, taking the top 5 out of that from the vote, what is our approach? Do we want to interview the top 3 board members?
Mr. Chair, I have
Go
no
ahead.
problem.
What do you-
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have no problem accepting the top 5 that have already been suggested, and then giving the board an additional 5 to add on to that.
So you're going to be bringing 10 individuals to the table that you want us to interview?
Yes.
That's not going to work. What I'm saying to you, any 5 that have come out of a meeting that was not fundamentally done properly is void ab initio. You cannot use it.
Okay, so then, Mr. Chair.
And even more so.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Then I agree that we should just pick 5 candidates.
Mr. McCoy, continue.
The 3 basic elements or requirements to an open meeting, number 1, to a sunshine meeting is, number 1, the meeting has to be open at all times. A meeting is either fully open or it's closed. Number 2, reasonable notice must be given. Number 3, there must be minutes. So despite what the attorney says, none of those were met. So we don't know for certain what actually happened. And the very conspirators is the office administrator, Mr. Evans, who decided to substitute one of the members and the attorney who was sitting in the meeting. Call me crazy, but these are the very people that we trust to do the job, and you're going to say we're going to still take those same 5? We need to start fresh with the very 52 resumes and applications and do it ourselves. This is a monumental screw up that's going to cause somebody criminal charges. And it doesn't even have to be a situation whether it was willful or not. The very essence of sunshine law is that myself or anyone else that wanted to participate could have. And the fact is, I don't know what direction came out of those meetings. Just ironically, 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the 6 had this one person selected. And that, to me, unless he's the best and everyone else is not as good, that's a problem.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Spiritus, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Evans, is there a reason that we didn't advertise this in the American Planning Association newsletter?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Staff advertised it in a multitude of different things. I'm not 100% sure why it wasn't advertised, but it's probably more so a situation where they didn't know of that particular tool. But we did get applications from all over the country, and we did get 52 applicants in a period of, I think, under 30 days. But there's no specific reason why that particular publication was missed versus other publications.
Right, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, but when you go to the professional newsletters, you're going to get more qualified people. It's not a matter of numbers, it's a matter of the qualifications. I saw that out of a lot of the resumes that we received, these people had no background whatsoever really in economic development, and probably should not have even made it anywhere in the top 200. I'd rather see fewer responses and more qualifications. But regardless, I think we can work with what we have here. But I don't know what Mr. McCoy is suggesting how we handle this, but clearly we don't want to leave ourselves open for litigation.
Mr. Chair, if I may provide some additional clarity. With respect to the meeting that occurred where the candidates were in fact selected, it was a public meeting. That meeting was publicly noticed. The committee did not convene any other time before that particular meeting, only for the purposes of Ms. Desir communicating exactly what the expectations were going to be when the day that she would get the books.
See what I'm saying?
If I can finish, Mr. Chair, the day that she would drop off the books and the days in which the meetings were. Attorney Smith was on that particular call. They convened as a group to go over and communicate all their top 5 at that time. And again, the committee did not eliminate anybody from consideration. They merely outlined who the top 5 were. This meeting was to come back before the board, and you can say, I don't like those top 5. I have a completely different 5. I have 3 out of the 5. I have 2 out of the 5 for the purposes of moving however many you wanted to. And we explicitly said that the decision resides explicitly with the board for the purposes of making that decision. The substitution of the person that was on that committee is the office manager came to me and said, Mr. Manager, I am facilitating this entire process. I feel more comfortable if I step myself out. And so based on the communication or the actual dialogue, staff said, well, I said, if there's an executive director that's available to help out, I would think that the board would be pleased with saying, okay, Ms. Desir stepped out because she's managing the process. Somebody with an economic development experience that has the job serves in that particular role for the purposes of reviewing that application. There's no malice, there's no ill intent, there's no nefarious plot. It is merely to bring you some names for your consideration. And if you don't want to go forward with those 5 names and you have 5 other names tonight, you can certainly put those things forward. And I just wanted to provide clarity with Rick. The only meeting that occurred that was out was that meeting that they talked, and I wasn't on that meeting, so I can't speak in great specificity. But I know that what one of the elements of the days that they would get the books and the like. And so I just want to make sure that the board has and has always had the authority to make the determination as to how many, who, and when they interview.
And to that point, Mr. Evans, I believe Attorney Smith had already given the direction as to what happened and giving clarity to how things transpired. I appreciate the insight, but I don't think that's the concern of this board as of right now. And like you said, we can proceed accordingly. So, board, we have five. We want to bring back five names for the board to consider, and let's interview. When do we want to have those returned to us? I know we would plan on interviewing next week, but do we want to bring that back next week and then do interviews the following? Does that work for everybody? July 31st, return names. And Attorney Smith, how would that work in regards to providing these names to?
The first question I asked, would the mayor be allowed to suggest names also? He can't vote on the names, but that would be a question of this board.
Mr.
Board
Chair.
members? Ms. Mill Anderson, go ahead.
So you're saying we're going to have a meeting on July 31st to just bring the names back?
I'm not
Is
sure
that-
if we have to have a meeting to just bring the names back. Is that a requirement, Attorney Smith?
Yeah, I would want a publicly noticed meeting, and we do have a meeting for you to put forth your names to be interviewed with, and votes on those names, so we would know in a public forum what names those are and when, and set the dates for it.
Okay. So if we bring back our list of five next week, we can vote on a final list at the next week meeting and then set a date for interviews. Would we like to set an interview date tonight as well, if the board is inclined to do that?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would say, so we're not looking like we're constantly changing, because, we thought we were going to get through what we were supposed to get through tonight and didn't. I would say when we meet, if we're going to have this special meeting next week, just to bring these names forward, we set a date then, so that people are not having to continue to make changes, and, because, never mind, go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Attorney Smith, go
just
ahead.
realize that you will have to set a special meeting if you're to proceed next week to bring back just the names. That would be a special meeting set by the chair to do that.
Thank you. We had intentions, I believe there was a recommendation that we would do interviews. I believe the board's recommendation tonight is to just bring names next Wednesday, and we can ratify that. Board, are we okay with 6 p.m. to bring back the list, ratify the list, and to determine the date for interviews?
What's the date?
July 31st will be the date we bring back the names, but we have not set a date for potential interviews yet. But July 31st, next Wednesday, sir.
Well, I'm just curious, do we have to actually convene to bring back the names? Because another thing that I noticed was on that on that meeting on the 10th, it seemed that the very person from Lake Worth didn't even show up. She just sent forth names. And, that for me is kind of questionable, because seemingly I've never seen if board members can't sit here and vote and send in votes. Like, is that something that we can do?
So,
because if that's allowed for that situation, do we really need to convene?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mill Anderson?
It's a question.
And Attorney Smith,
Well,
he did just address that. He said he would like for us to convene, but is it a requirement?
Yes, I
Mr.
would say
Chair.
it's a requirement. If you're going to set a meeting and if you're going to set a list and a interview time, that will be a requirement that you come in and you vote on those.
But then why didn't we make that same requirement for our committee?
That meeting that's referenced by Commissioner McCoy was a sunshine meeting, and the person that was not there sent in the names, but those were only recommendations. Those weren't voted on to be to be interviewed. That can only be done by this board itself. That's a recommendation, but this board makes all determinations as to who's being interviewed. And if you're going to determine who's going to be interviewed, this board would have to vote on it to make it official.
Okay, so can we send in a list of names prior to the meeting, have them ratified at next week's meeting and set a date for interviews?
Mr. Chair, if I
Mr.
may.
Evans, go ahead.
The difference with the situation is, to Attorney Smith's point, is that we moved the date on that particular meeting to accommodate the request of the mayor. So that messed up the schedule for that particular person. And so they communicated via email their list, and then Ms. Desir read that into the record. But nobody was eliminated from consideration. You, as the board, are effectively eliminating people from consideration. So you have to do that in a public setting, because you are now selecting persons that would move to subsequent steps in the process. Now, there's nothing that precludes you from emailing it, and then we create an agenda item that can be published. But that's assuming that the board is going to provide, all the board members would agree to provide us with their information in advance of the meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, I think it's just best that we meet, because if we're submitting these names, if each one of us submits 5 names, what if we all submit 5 different names, each one of us? I mean, how are we going to narrow that down? We can't do that through an email. So the best way to do that is just for us to meet, even if we're only in there for 15, 20 minutes. We meet on next week, agree on our names, and move forward. I know we keep going back to this committee meeting, but we're kind of rehashing the same thing over and over. And I think the point has been made, you know, with people being displeased as how it occurred. But can we just move on with this for July 31st?
I'm okay with bringing my names or sending them in early, bringing them next week. I'm okay with either option. Dr. Spiritus?
Objection.
Okay. Commissioner McCoy, you okay with that for next week?
Yeah. I don't have a choice, seemingly. And yeah, I don't have a choice.
Mr. Chair, can we have that in a motion so we'll know exactly what we're doing?
But does it matter that we put things in a motion?
Yes, sir.
Really?
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we're going to have our 5 names. We're going to have a meeting next week. We're meeting, right? Not submitting them by email.
Gonna meet, yes, ma'am.
Okay, 6 p.m., July 31st. Bring our 5 names and we'll discuss and deliberate and come up with the selection.
Motion.
Second.
Motion been made, properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 4-0.
Discussion. Second, Director. Attorney Smith?
It was brought to my attention, the meeting dates for our regular meetings, after review of the bylaws. The bylaws state that this board should meet at 5:30 p.m. on the second Wednesday of each month. Special meetings of the agency can be called by the chair, but the bylaws state that this board should meet the second Wednesday of each month at 5:30 p.m. It was revised in November of 2012 to move the time from 6 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. So under your bylaws, or to be determined by the Board of Commissioners. So, but under your bylaws, you're to meet every second Wednesday of the month at 5:30. But the board can determine a different time to meet, or a special meeting can be called by the chair. And I think the chair just called a special meeting for next Wednesday.
Yes.
And that's it.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. Comments from the commission, starting with Ms. Miller Anderson.
No, I have none.
Thank you, Dr. Spiritus.
I just want to agree with the chair I think the staff at the CRA did a good job in getting related to the table, and hopefully we'll see their project developed. And uh, looking forward to seeing 0 through 6 developed as well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I do apologize. The clerk just told me that we have public comment cards. I will read the comments. Public comment shall begin at 7:30 unless there's no further business of the CRA Commission. In the event, it shall begin sooner. If an item is being considered, items will be excluded from this. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Commissioner McCoy, if you want to make comments before public comments come up.
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I would rather wait.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Zaire, public comment cards.
Delcia Hamilton Brook, followed by Mary Bram.
Thank you. Ms. Delcia.
Mary,
Ms. Mary Bram.
Mary Bram.
She left. Thank you. Anybody else?
Margaret Shepard.
Ms. Shepard.
Margaret Shepherd, Riviera Beach. I did just want to mention that the ballots are out, and I've been to different homes trying to make them understand the ballot. What happened was, and I hope those that received the ballots, a couple of them was in Spanish. The supervisor of election has instructed that you bring those ballots back to Cherry Road, and they will release another ballot to you by mail. But if you need me, I'm still available. Give me a call. You know where I live at, and I'm at your disposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Additional comments? Additional comments, Madam Clerk? Comment cards?
There are no more
Thank you.
comment cards.
Go ahead, Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just perplexed and baffled how this very body, a couple months ago, incorporated a bylaw provision that would then call for adverse action against a board member for interfering with staff. But when the board lays out a definitive motion, and I just asked the attorney, does it matter that we vote on something? And he said yes, but apparently not to staff. And I think the most appropriate thing to do if staff had concerns about the appointees was to bring it back. But not only did they not follow the board's direction, they decided to usurp the board's authority. You know, there was a suggestion that we get brought up on chapter 112 of the Florida statutes in public ethics of officers for interfering. But what is the responsibility for staff? And, you know, I've noticed time and time again, just even tonight, Mr. Evans, time after time, you consistently don't accept responsibility. I want somebody to own that we made a mistake and put it out there, as opposed to coming up with excuse after excuse. Then you get some sort of appointee to send in their votes. Mrs. Smith, you couldn't be any further from the truth when you said that. If you're saying because they only make a recommendation, well, how about every other advisory board just email in their votes? The Planning and Zoning Board doesn't operate like that. The Library Advisory Board, it does not matter. I've read the Sunshine Law Manual inside and out. So I'm very familiar that even as a recommending body, whether you believe it or not, your recommendation is official action of that body, and that's required to be open. So I just don't understand it, Mr. Evans, and I'm really to the point where I think I'm going to offer this motion to relieve you of the executive directive duties. We don't need to wait till we get a new. I would like to move forward with the motion to put Mr. Scott Evans in as the interim executive director until we find a placement, and even invite him to apply, Mr. Chair.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'll make the second of that motion only because I think the city manager has more pressing business with the city to do right now. And I do believe that the city manager still will be working with the CRA to ensure that all the projects move forward.
Well, I did want to have some discussion, so thank you for the motion and second. I had a question. Mr. Evans, the agreement was that you were going to stay on until we found an executive director. And that was going to be you were going to be transitioning those roles. There was no set timeline. It was, I believe, the July 15th or until we found somebody, from my I understand.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
If I may, yes. I was going to assist in helping the board effectively transition the Office of Executive Director.
Got it. And to that point, I think that I agree with some of the sentiments that we have a lot of concerns that I want you to just be laser focused on, that we're trying to clean up in the utility district and in the city. So I think it is in the best interest if we do move forward with preparing for the new executive director to come in, allowing for you to be laser focused on the city, and then allowing for Mr. Scott Evans to take in as the interim role until we fill that, which is going to be the next period of time.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
if I may.
Go ahead, Mr.
I've already resigned the position.
Yes,
If
sir.
it's effectively not the board's desire to have me serve in the position any longer, I will effectively, there's no need for an action of the board. Tonight will be my last night serving in that particular capacity. And you can have the conversation with Mr. Evans if he's willing to serve in that particular responsibility.
And to that point, that was if Mr. Scott Evans was going to serve in that capacity. So that was going to be the next question.
And Mr. Chair,
Ms. Miller Anderson, go ahead.
I hope we remember it was the same board that got rid of Mr. Scott Evans as the CRA director. And now we're going to go back and ask him, will he now reconsider going back into that position? I understand people are, there's a lot going on right now, but we really have to make sure we're paying attention to how we're kind of, making these knee-jerk react decisions and just, getting rid of people, and because we're trying to get somebody to come here. And I just think that, at least tonight anyway, between the two meetings, it just seems that, we're just not being consistent, or we're not, it's very difficult for me to try to explain this right now, but I just want to make sure that people realize how we're being perceived to the public and to those who we want to come and work for us or do business with us. So obviously, whatever the majority of the board wants to do, that's fine, but I do not support this at all. I mean, we agreed, we'll try to get a new director in, do the interviews, have Mr. Evans, we were okay with him staying on until we got that done, but I just think we need to have some sort of consistency here, because we're kind of cutting up everything here all throughout the day. The utility district, I just don't think it's a good thing right now that we keep doing this, but however the board wants to move is fine with me.
Understood. And Mr. Evans was clear, though. He did resign the position because he has been laser focused on this, and we're just giving him the additional support of that. So I'm not sure, Attorney Smith, if a motion is required, but I do know.
I would suggest that the motion be to appoint Scott Evans as interim. If that is the
No, sir.
okay.
Thank you for your perspective, but I was very clear. And don't usurp what I just offered, Mrs. Smith. That's exactly my concern with him. Mr. Chair, can I be recognized?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not getting this, right? Apparently, Mrs. Smith, perhaps this is probably not so much directed at you, but Mr. Evans, apparently you're not understanding that it is so frustrating to be here for an entire week, and within the hour of our meeting, we get an agenda for a meeting that just lasted over 3 hours, with the expectation that you want this board to come in and rubber stamp it. There's no way you can possibly hold on to this many responsibilities and having such a failure like you usurping the board's authority, or that you provide supervisory authority over the utility special district director, but apparently your supervisory authority didn't even exist when there was a failure with one of the people that you oversee. So for those very reasons, he's already tendered his resignation. So we're just asking that we would go ahead and waive that notice, or waive whatever requirement, and put Mr. Scott Evans in. There's no need. I think we just need to move forward. It was already brought up tonight, and I was literally already at that point, was when we started in 2019, we were in the holding pattern with Karen Hoskins for the first couple meetings, and nobody wanted to do anything until the new city manager got back the city manager got back here. And I feel no differently now. I'd much rather get a fresh start and start from scratch, because at this point, it seems to be a regular recurring pattern that there's no accepting of responsibility, and it's always, I had this excuse, or we had this and we had that. Well, I mean, you know what, I think that's why we need to be able to allocate this to where we have individuals that can devote the time, and we don't have to deal with all of the excuses. But what I am already seeing, and I shared it with Mr. Smith as to why he brought this up, we have completely said, board members, come sign up, run for office. But what's not clear is, you look at the charter, you look at the bylaws, and then you decide you want to pursue office. But when you get in office, instead of you meeting once a month, you're meeting 4 Wednesdays out of the month, and that's never been called out. And you're meeting on the very Wednesdays that should have been the Wednesday that the board has off. So it takes a whole lot to actually prepare for a meeting. So I'm just not comfortable with moving forward at this point, because I was very upset to see that my board members wouldn't even take my advice to now modify a motion that they had made. But staff gets to unilaterally take it among themselves to do this very thing that I asked my colleagues to do: consider another alternative. And for all I know, I don't even know who this lady was that came out of Lake Worth. She could have been very much beholden to someone, but I thought it was very, very interesting that all of these votes lined it up, that out of 52 applicants, one person was selected 5 out of the 6 times by 5 different persons. And then it was a domino effect of the number of things that was wrong. A meeting where nobody recorded it. Mr. Evans will sit here and tell you what happened in the meeting, and he wasn't even there. So clearly, like, this is a problem, board members, and we have to recognize, I think all of us as adults, when we know what we can and can't do. And I think for me, I'm not seeing that with the manager, and I really appreciate, and I've not seen anybody with the ambitions of the manager, but I just don't think that this is prudent for us at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may. And certainly, my resignation from this position was not a situation where I didn't think I can do the job. I thought it was appropriate, and based on conversations with board members, I thought it was appropriate to vacate the seat and allow for somebody else to give the time, energy, and effort that this position requires, because we're on the precipice of a lot of great opportunities. In addition to some of the challenges that we have over at the city side, invariably requires more of my time. And so I made that decision to effectively vacate this particular seat. And yes, if there's mistakes, I take full responsibility for my mistakes and my errors and the organization's mistakes and errors. But you know what? Also, it would be nice to hear some praise associated with some of the things that we do too, because every meeting, every 2 weeks, I sit here and I hear for citizen comments after time after time after time of all the things we do wrong, but never the things we do good. So yes, there's going to be pages that are missing. Yes, there's going to be typos. We have to put 1,500 page documents together, and there's, yes, invariably mistakes, but this happens in every municipality, and I've served in other municipalities, so we're human. And as it relates to the people that served on the committee, they were volunteers that served on that committee. Invariably, this board makes decisions where you all are on the same page. It doesn't mean that there's co-conspiring to get things accomplished. They saw a candidate that they agreed on, and invariably you all as the board have to be the ones that co-sign that particular process. So I'm certainly glad to move back to my role as city manager. The executive director role and responsibility, if Mr. Evans is willing to take on that, he can certainly do that. But everybody here is working really hard to try to move the needle forward. And if we can collectively agree that if we make a mistake, okay, that's fine. But we have a situation where, call us, tell us this item's not right. We'll pull it off the agenda. We'll have more robust discussion. But it should never come to a point where the meetings are a gotcha moment. That's not how it operates. Nowhere. That's not right.
And as we look, and as candidates that are looking at this camera to sit in this particular position, I hope that they get an opportunity to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, but move the collective needle forward. I believe in what we're trying to do here. I believe in the staff. I believe in the team. I believe in the city. But yes, we're going to make mistakes. And yes, I take full responsibilities for substituting someone on that seat. But it was predicated that I said Councilperson McCoy wasn't at the meeting. He mentioned a CRA director. He even said that if we were going to take that, we need to have somebody with that experience. So yes, I made the decision to make that because it bolstered a better review of the interview process. So I take full fault for that.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And with it being in the late hour, I know Attorney Smith wants us to make a motion. Commissioner McCoy. I don't want this to be perceived as a decision that's being done in outside the public eye in the wee hours of the morning or without the intent. Mr. Evans has stated on the record that he would be willing to take a step back. He's already resigned from the position, and if I'm not even sure if Mr. Scott Evans would take on that position. So board, in fairness of public, if we give Mr. Evans the opportunity to step back from that position and have Mr. Evans, if he will take the role, step into that position, I do want us to possibly ratify that at the next meeting, as opposed to this hour, just so that it's clear with the public. And if we could support that, Commissioner McCoy, Commissioner Spiritus. Thoughts?
No, sir. The very point that I'm saying to you, Mr. Chair,
you don't want to wait another week.
It's a egregious violation. We're going to allow Mr. Evans to stay on until the next meeting. There's not even a mention of what the office manager's responsibilities were, and where's the accountability there? Mr. Chair, I think I was pretty certain, and I had literally sitting here and thinking about the very thing that happened with us now incorporating this whole interference clause, and how is that not the very same situation of staff being placed in that situation? So I don't think if you want to not support it, then that's your prerogative. But what are we doing? I'm ready for someone to get in here that doesn't have to be concerned with every other responsibility, like us getting notices. And then, to the very point, he said the gotcha moment was when I walked in and I seen these items on the agenda without the adequate information. So it happens. But I just can't be distracted with all of this. We shouldn't be distracted with all of this other stuff when we have to be answering to the public and everyone else.
There's no comments from the board. There's already a motion on the table and it's been seconded. Before we do pass this motion, Mr. Scott Evans, as part of the motion that was requested to put you in as the interim, would you be accepting of that position? Hey, Mr. Scott Evans.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
I really like my current job, and I really enjoy working for Riviera Beach. It's been over 20 years, and I love it. I have some very specific family commitments. In September, I'm getting married, and having two jobs, and it really is two jobs. It's not like I would just, someone has to be the planning and development director, especially with all of our projects moving forward. So something would have to suffer. So it's not my desire to have the interim job. I really like my current job, and I have commitments that would make it so that I can't serve in that role beyond mid-September. I support all of my coworkers. I have really enjoyed working for Mr. Evans. If you need someone to help make sure that things continue running between now and middle of September, I will reluctantly assist. But I love being the planning and development director at the CRA, and I'm here to help the board as needed, but certainly is not something that I desire.
Thank you for your comments. And to that point, Commissioner McCoy, that was just part of the motion. So I did want Mr. Scott Evans to put on the record that it would be time sensitive. He's requesting through September with us trying to fill that position. So I wanted to take that into consideration before we just make that motion and move forward with the vote.
I would ask that Mr. McCoy please restate his motion so we fully understand it. And that's all I was trying to say before, was trying to get to your motion. So what is your motion, sir?
Mr. Attorney, I asked that we remove Mr. Jonathan Evans as the executive director. He's already put in his notice, but the caveat was that until there's a replacement, but I don't think we need to wait on a replacement. I would like to move forward with an interim, and that's why I offered up Scott Evans. So that's my motion.
Okay.
So with the proviso that he has to only do this through the end of September, is that right?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Miller Anderson.
Mr. Scott Evans is just being kind, I think. He doesn't want this position. At this rate, who would want this position? I wouldn't if I'm having to sit there and go through this kind of stuff every night. Why are we going to put Mr. Scott Evans through this to have to make a decision to do a job that he doesn't want? And we relieved him of this job not too long ago. I just think that's a slap in the face. Now you want me to come back. You got rid of me. Now you want me to come back. First of all, I think this has been a very heavy 2 meetings, and we're kind of all over the place. And I think we're working off of emotions on some of this stuff. We are going to come together next week with a list of names. Can we just maintain what we have for the moment until we see what we're going to do next week, instead of putting people on the spot and asking them to take over something that they really don't want to take over? I mean, it's very clear he does not want that position. And to have him come up there and say he's going to commit to doing something that he didn't walk in tonight thinking he was going to have to do is not right. It's not right. And I just think we really need to pause for a minute, because we're kind of attacking all over the place here right now today. And it just does not look good. It does not look good to try to get someone to try to come work for us. I think we're making it harder and harder to attract people by the way in which we're behaving in these meetings, especially today. It is not a good look. So I don't know where you all want to go with this, but I would not suggest asking Mr. Scott Evans to do this. And he just said he reluctantly would do it. Why would you want to put somebody in a position that truly is not comfortable with doing so? I would not want that stress myself. And I don't think it's right to put that on him like that. Thank you.
Mr. Scott Evans said that he would take it through September, even though it was tentative because of his commitment.
Reluctantly.
Thank you, Ms. Miller Anderson. And he would take the position on through September. There's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Additional comments? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 3-1 with Miller Anderson dissenting.
Thank you. Additional comments from the board? No further business of the city. This meeting is adjourned.